On a sunny morning, something unusual happened. I heard footsteps coming into the house. It was Kevin and Elizabeth, carrying a lot of luggage. They were breathing heavily, but when they saw me, they smiled sarcastically and said, "We're moving in with you today. If you don't like it, divorce me and leave." I was shocked, but Kevin and Elizabeth started setting up their things in the living room. Then, Stella came in, looking sorry. I quietly said, "It's okay, but are you sure about this?" Kevin looked pale when he heard me. He quickly ran out of the house. A few minutes later, he called me, yelling so loud that even Elizabeth could hear it. "Are you serious? Why didn't you say anything before?" I calmly replied, "I thought I mentioned it." After a pause, Kevin said, "Anyway, I'm coming back," and hung up suddenly. Elizabeth seemed like she might faint from Kevin's yelling. I said, "I'm actually looking forward to Kevin coming back," which made Elizabeth twitch in surprise. I added, "Get ready, the trouble's just starting. My name is Madison, and I'm 45 years old. I work in an office, and last year, I got transferred to a very busy department, so I've been working a lot. I married Kevin when I was 40. We met at a company party where Kevin was a guest, and we hit it off because we're both from the same hometown. Kevin is 5 years older than me and is very confident, which was perfect for me because I had almost given up on marriage by that time. We dated for a year and got married without a wedding ceremony because Kevin thought it was a waste of money, which made me a little sad, but looking back, I wish I had thought more about the marriage before agreeing. "Hey, you didn't do the laundry again, did you?" Kevin asked. He was what people call a henpecked husband. Before we got married, he lived alone and could do housework, but after we married, he started saying men shouldn't do housework. He refused to do it and told me, "I'll do it tonight," since I got home late from work. I replied, "Coming home to be yelled at just makes me more tired." Kevin, upset with my response, raised his eyebrows and said, "Don't talk back. Who do you think brings home the food you eat?" Honestly, I earn more money than Kevin. He knew this when we got married, and we agreed on both of us working, but after a year of marriage, it felt like he had completely forgotten that. I used to argue with him, but as Kevin kept getting angrier and shouting more, I stopped. I quickly started apologizing just to keep the peace. "I'm sorry, it was my fault." Kevin replied, "Do you really think so?" "Yes, thank you," I said. "It's because of your hard work that we can live this life." This would make Kevin happy. He'd hum a tune and then go take a bath. At first, I thought his henpecked behavior was kind of manly, but after 3 years, I was getting tired of it. I didn't choose divorce though, because my in-laws were such wonderful people. I'd go out to lunch with my mother-in-law, Mia, once a month, and my father-in-law, Ricky, would give me birthday gifts. At their house, Kevin was kind and smiled, and we had good times together. My own parents had passed away when I was young, so my in-laws were like real parents to me. That's why I hesitated to divorce Kevin. But there was one thing I couldn't stand, Elizabeth, Kevin's sister-in-law, who lived nearby. Elizabeth had divorced because of her affair and now lived alone in an apartment. When I heard about her affair, I started to dislike her. Elizabeth didn't like me either and would badmouth me in front of Kevin, who always supported her instead of reprimanding her. Elizabeth had a daughter named Stella, who lived with her ex-husband. Stella was the spitting image of Elizabeth, but she had a completely different, kind personality. Stella was a very good girl. She used to visit Elizabeth about twice a month, and each time, Elizabeth would bring Stella to our house. "Just a minute, Madison. Please feed Stella something delicious. I'm heading out," Elizabeth would say as she left. "Thanks, bye," Elizabeth would say quickly and leave without waiting for me to respond. Every time, Stella would apologize, and I couldn't ignore such a sweet girl like her. So, I ended up feeding her and taking her out to different places. "Madison, thank you, as always," Stella would say. "It's okay, did you have fun?" I'd ask. "Yes, it was really fun, can I come again?" "Of course," I'd say, smiling as Stella watched my face, shyly asking. I couldn't say no to her. Since I didn't have children of my own, I found Stella very endearing, but I also thought it wasn't good that her real mom, Elizabeth, was never around when Stella visited. So, I decided to ask Kevin, "Hey, whenever Stella comes, Elizabeth is never around, can't she spend a little more time with her?" I only wanted the best for Stella, but Kevin didn't take it that way. His face turned red with anger, and he shouted, "Elizabeth is hurt from her divorce. Unlike you, she's delicate, and yet, you blame her?" I tried to explain, "No, it's not like that. I was just wondering where she goes every time after dropping Stella off. Kevin snapped. There's no need for you to know, just shut up and listen. I didn't say anything more. Kevin wasn't listening to me at all. After a few more apologies from me, Kevin calmed down and started getting ready to leave. I'm heading out, he said. Where are you going? I asked. It's my business. You just stay quiet and say, have a nice day, Kevin yelled as he slammed the door and left. Alone in the quiet room, I cried. It was then that I seriously started to think about divorce, but I hesitated because of my in-laws. A little later, Mia, my mother-in-law, invited me to lunch, and I decided to go after a long time. Where are you going on your day off? Kevin asked. I'm going to lunch with Kevin's mom, I replied. Just don't talk about Elizabeth, Kevin warned me. Why not? I asked, not understanding what Kevin meant. Kevin shouted in frustration, can't you think a little? You're really stupid, just go already and don't talk about Elizabeth. Before I could respond, Kevin shoved me out of the house. Still upset, I went to meet Mia, and we talked over lunch. By the way, Elizabeth is coming over, right? Mia asked. Huh, you knew? I said. I thought so. Mia sighed deeply and then apologized to me. Apparently, Stella had told Mia that she was bothering me by visiting. I thought I raised her strictly, but maybe it's a reaction, Mia said. She's into nightclubs. Nightclubs? I asked, surprised. That's right, Mia replied. She seems to have a lot of debt. I was shocked by Mia's words. When Elizabeth came to our house, she always wore expensive clothes and seemed well off. When I told Mia this, Mia looked even more troubled. That child, we've cut ties with her, Madison. You should too, Mia said. Kevin's probably spoiling Elizabeth. Mia then told me something surprising. When Elizabeth's affair was exposed, Kevin kept supporting her. He even paid off her debts. Hearing this was an eye-opener for me. I'm thinking of divorcing Kevin, I told Mia. I'm sorry for the trouble, I added. That's all right, I'll support you, Mia said, holding my hand. I thought about how things might have been if my own mom were alive, and I started making plans for the divorce. I worked on the preparations carefully so Kevin wouldn't notice. Hoping to wake Kevin up to the truth, I casually mentioned Elizabeth's debts, but Kevin wouldn't listen. As I faced more of Kevin's yelling, I realized I no longer felt any love for him. With the help of my in-laws, I gathered enough evidence and learned some shocking truths. Then, the day of action came unexpectedly. On a sunny morning, which was rare these days, I heard footsteps coming into the living room. It was Kevin and Elizabeth, carrying a lot of luggage. They were out of breath, but when they saw me, they smiled sarcastically and said, "We're moving in with you starting today. If you don't like it, divorce me and leave." Ignoring my shock, Kevin and the others began spreading their things around the living room. Then, Stella, looking apologetic, followed them in. I quietly said, "It's okay, but are you sure about this?" Kevin turned pale when he heard me, then rushed out of the house. A few minutes later, he called. When I answered, he started shouting so loudly that even Elizabeth could hear it. "Are you kidding me? Why didn't you say anything before?" he yelled. "I thought I mentioned it," I said calmly. After a pause, Kevin replied, "Anyway, I'm coming back," and then hung up suddenly. Elizabeth looked like she might faint from Kevin's yelling. "I'm actually looking forward to Kevin coming back," I said. At my words, Elizabeth's shoulders tensed in surprise. "Get ready, the trouble is just beginning," I added. When Kevin returned, he immediately confronted Elizabeth. "Elizabeth, what's this about your debts? I didn't know anything about it," he asked. "It's just a small debt," Elizabeth answered, avoiding eye contact. I couldn't help but laugh at her response. Elizabeth glared at me, so I decided to respond. "Really, Elizabeth? Calling $150,000 a small debt? I couldn't call such a huge amount a small debt." Elizabeth turned to me with a face that looked like she might cry when I casually mentioned the amount, but I had no intention of letting her off easily. "The guy from the nightclub, he recently got married, right?" Elizabeth got dumped, huh? Kevin asked. "I'm not dumped," Elizabeth snapped. "Once I get this house, he'll come back to me, and when we sell this place, we'll use the money." Elizabeth had accidentally revealed her plan and looked at Kevin with a guilty expression. Kevin, confused, kept glancing back and forth between Elizabeth and me. I decided to tell Kevin the truth. "Elizabeth plans to kick me out. Then you and she will sell the house. With the money, she'll pay off her debts and fund her nightclub guy. What the hell is that? Kevin asked, stunned. He couldn't believe his sister was using him like this. Is this all a lie? Kevin asked, his voice shaking. I want to live with Stella, so let us stay, I said, trying to reason with him. I was planning to work and support both you and Stella. Hearing Kevin's words, my head ached. He couldn't support his wife, but he was planning to support his sister and niece. Elizabeth defiantly replied, you're just an ATM, big brother. Once we sell the house, I can go back to him. Won't you listen to my request? ATM? What's that about? Kevin asked, clearly confused. Enough, Elizabeth, Kevin shouted in frustration. The two of them kept yelling at each other, and it felt ugly and ridiculous. I wasn't the one who spoke up though, it was Stella. Enough, both of you, Stella said. I don't want to live together. I only came here today to say goodbye. What do you mean? Elizabeth and Kevin both asked, shocked. They stopped fighting and turned to look at Stella. Stella sighed deeply, then looked at Elizabeth with a cool, distant gaze. She started to speak slowly. Mom, you're not interested in my life, right? I think I told you before, but I'm going to study abroad starting high school. So, today I'm here to tell you goodbye. I never heard anything like that. Elizabeth raised her voice in shock. Stella looked at her with clear disdain. Because you never really listen to me, you're always chasing after men. I don't need a mom like that. Madison is my mom. What do you mean? Elizabeth glared at Stella, as if she were an enemy, but I was just as surprised. Stella walked up to me and hugged me tightly. Thank you for holding my hand, for the delicious meals, for listening, and for taking me places. You felt like a real mom. Stella's words warmed my heart. I felt so fulfilled and happy, as if everything I had done for her had finally paid off. I never had children, so I often worried if I was interacting with Stella the right way. That's why I was even more moved by her words. Stella, I too am happy to be with you. Do your best over there, I said, wiping away my tears. Stella smiled at me. Yeah, I want to call and send messages. Is that okay? Of course, I said, and we shared a laugh. Elizabeth watched us, resentfully, then, with a smug smile, as if she had an idea, she started laughing. Stella, I'll go with you. It's hard to live there alone, isn't it? Let's live together. They'll pay for our living expenses, right? I was astounded by her audacity, and Stella beside me looked just as disgusted, but Elizabeth, unaware of our reactions, continued to fantasize about life after going abroad. Mom, while Stella's at school, we can go to the beach or shopping. When she's working her part-time job, I'll take a nap. At night, I'll go out a bit. Elizabeth only talked about leisure, with no mention of work. Stella looked at her with contempt and suddenly burst into laughter. What's so funny? Elizabeth asked angrily. It's hilarious, Stella said. Why would I want to live with you? Besides, I'm going to be in a dormitory, so you can't come. Elizabeth's face turned red with anger, but before she could lash out at Stella, someone interrupted. Enough already, came a deep voice. Ricky suddenly appeared in the living room, surprising Elizabeth. Mia was with him, looking angry. I heard from Madison and came here. How long are you going to keep troubling everyone? Mia said sharply. Mom, this is a misunderstanding. Stella decided this on her own. Elizabeth tried to explain. But Mia stepped forward, raised her hand, and a loud slap echoed in the living room. The room fell silent. Elizabeth was the first to speak. That's awful. You hit me. Mia retorted. You deserve it. I should have stepped in sooner. I left you alone after all the trouble you caused for Madison. We've arranged for you to stay with a relative. We're leaving now, Mia said. Elizabeth turned pale and looked to Kevin for help, but he avoided her gaze. Feeling betrayed, Elizabeth was led out of the house by Ricky. Kevin looked at me, pale-faced, and said, Hey, I'm sorry, I should have listened to Madison more. I'll listen from now on. Mia retorted, surprised by Kevin's casual words. What a naive thought. She continued, emotionlessly, I told you before not to involve yourself with Elizabeth, especially when you're married, but you didn't listen. Now, the only choice left is divorce. Kevin looked at me, shocked, and I smiled at him, feeling slightly relieved. I then prepared to drop the bombshell. Let's get a divorce. I'll also claim alimony for your verbal abuse, and maybe for infidelity too, I said. Kevin stumbled over his words, trying to act innocent. Infidelity? What are you talking about? I felt pathetic for ever thinking such a man could be reliable. I pulled out several photos from my bag and showed them to Kevin. Do you recognize this woman? Did you take secret photos? If someone is doing something they shouldn't, isn't it their fault? Kevin, seemingly out of excuses, stayed silent. Looking frustrated, I laid out some documents and had him sign them. After everything was finalized, I smiled at him and said, "Thank you for everything. Even though I made more money, did all the housework, and handled everything else, it was me who took care of everything, so take care, and don't forget the payments." Kevin had nothing more to say. I said goodbye to Mia and left our house. I arranged to pick up my belongings later and stayed at a nearby hotel. After dropping Stella off at her home, I finally had a clean room, a soft bed, and a space without anyone to complain. That's when I truly regained my freedom after 5 years. The next day, I promptly filed for divorce and became truly free. Mia called to apologize and assured me that Kevin would deposit the alimony within a week, which he did in full. Since Kevin had little savings left from giving money to Elizabeth, the in-laws had paid the alimony in advance. They told me not to worry, as they would get Kevin to repay it in full. Kevin lost his job and ended up living with a different relative. He was sent to a farm where he worked from dawn to dusk without any holidays. Escape was impossible without a car, and the mountain roads were too much for Kevin, who had never driven them. I thought it was tough, but I didn't feel sorry for him. Kevin's affair partner was a club girl who only saw him as a paying customer. She didn't even know he was married and apologized when I met her. She even returned the branded bags Kevin had given her, which I sold and used the money for lunches with Stella. Elizabeth was sent to live with relatives near the sea, working from sunrise every day. Her once well-maintained hair and nails were now a mess. She had fallen behind on child support payments for Stella, and the relatives had to cover it, so now she worked unpaid. I could only hope she might change her ways. Stella, on the other hand, successfully went abroad and now lives in an overseas dormitory. She's gotten close to a girl she shares a room with, and I get messages about their daily adventures. She's planning to bring her friend for a visit during a long break, and I've agreed to host them for sightseeing. As for me, my days are still busy, but without the marriage, my chores are halved, and there's no one to complain. It's a different kind of busy, but much more fulfilling. When I dropped Stella off, I met her dad, Elizabeth's ex-husband, for the first time. He's a nice guy, and we exchanged contacts. We kept in touch about Stella and eventually started going out together. I found peace just being with him, something I never had with Kevin. Even I'm a bit surprised by these feelings. Stella is thrilled about me seeing him. Recently, during a video call, she asked, "When are you getting remarried?" I told her I'm not thinking about it yet, but if he feels the same, maybe someday. To me, Stella is like a true daughter, and she feels the same. Becoming a real family would make me incredibly happy. With that hope in my heart, I had to work today as well.
Your drawings won't sell. If you have time for that, get a part-time job, Liam declared, tearing up the tickets to my art show before my eyes. As the torn pieces fluttered to the ground, tears welled up in my eyes. The dream I had nurtured since childhood, finally realized in my own art exhibition, was consistently belittled by both Liam and my in-laws whenever I picked up a pencil. Despite the constant criticism, I persisted. I juggled household chores and the care of our daughter Lucy, never neglecting my responsibilities. I refrained from criticizing Liam's hobbies, but this blatant disrespect was too much to bear. I decided I wouldn't forgive Liam. It was time to live life on my terms, without allowing anyone to dictate or complain. Picking up the torn tickets, I locked eyes with Liam. I'm Emma, 35 years old, married to Liam since I was 22. Lucy, our only daughter, just started elementary school. As a mother, seeing her adapt to school life brings me some peace of mind. After seeing Liam and Lucy off and completing household chores, I settle at my desk. Working as a freelance illustrator, my clients range from individuals to corporations. Despite steady commissions, my family has never acknowledged the value of my work. We reside in a second-hand house with my in-laws, who contribute nothing to household chores and only complain about my cooking and drawing, labeling me as useless. Their belief that drawings can't make money persists, despite my explanations. They suggest I give them money from the Social Security checks they receive, claiming it's proof of their past hard work. I proposed living separately, but Liam always defends his parents, making me the villain. Lucy adores her grandmother, who spends her money on toys for her. Lucy compares me unfavorably, believing her grandma would never say no. When I intervene, Lucy accuses me of being mean, causing public scenes. One night, after Liam scolded me for making Lucy cry, he decided that he and his mother would take care of her. This commitment lasted only 3 days before I was once again tasked with Lucy's care. Despite the challenges, my art thrived. Receiving an email invitation for a solo exhibition, I embraced the recognition from clients who appreciated my work. Working tirelessly into the night, I created new pieces for the upcoming exhibition. Despite my family's indifference, the thought of showcasing my art to a wider audience fueled my determination. Facing a dilemma about inviting Liam to the exhibition, I approached him during a baseball game he was engrossed in. His response dashed my hopes as he revealed plans to hang out with friends on the day of my exhibition. "Oh, can't you spare a little time?" I pleaded. "My artwork's been recognized, and I have a solo exhibition coming up. I was hoping you'd come see it." Liam remained fixated on the TV, silent. Desperation edged my voice as I repeated, "It's my first solo show. Some of my regulars even helped plan it. And I've got some new pieces on display." "What the hell are you talking about?" Liam finally looked at me, disdain in his eyes. "Don't drag me into your little hobby. It's not a hobby. Some of the displayed artwork might even sell. Who the hell's gonna buy your drawings? If you've got time for that, why don't you just get a part-time job?" Liam shouted, snatching the ticket from my hand. He tore it up, and the torn pieces scattered at our feet. Staring at the fragments in shock, tears welled up. Picking up the pieces, it became clear Liam would never understand my profession. I never belittled his hobbies, yet he never allowed me the same freedom. "I've had enough," I glared at him. "I can't take it anymore," I declared, venting my feelings. The words solidified my resolve. I'm gonna break up with Liam. To be honest, the thought of divorce had always been on my mind. I've already got a contact number for a lawyer who assists in the divorce process. But every time I considered it, Lucy crossed my mind. Our child needs both parents. Moreover, if I left, Lucy would have to transfer schools. That's what I'd endured all this time. But that ends today. Ignoring Liam's calls, I returned to my room. Packing my things, I confirmed the lawyer's business card was there. Heading to Lucy's room, I found her doing her homework at her desk. "Mom, I'm sorry," Lucy said. Looking at her face, guilt washed over me. I hugged her, and Lucy looked puzzled. "Lucy, I've decided to leave this house." "What?" The innocence vanished from Lucy's face. Although guilty, I continued. "What do you want to do, Lucy? Stay here with Dad or come with me?" Expecting her to choose her grandma, Lucy surprised me. "I want to be with you, Mom." "Lucy, I love the paintings you make," I said, and Lucy laughed. She smiled shyly and pointed at her desk. "Just trying to be like you. I want to be a good artist too." "No, you're already good. You'll surpass me soon." Tears filled my eyes. Lucy was drawing a young girl standing in a flower field, a theme I often drew. Leaving a note and the lawyer's business card on the dining table, Lucy and I headed to my parents' place. They welcomed us without hesitation, aware of the situation. "It must have been tough with Liam behaving like that, Emma," my mother said. "Yeah." Before I could catch my breath, my cell phone rang. It was Liam, seething with fury on the other end. "Emma, where's Lucy?" "She's with me. She decided to stay with me at my parents' place. If we're going through with a divorce, we'll need to discuss Lucy's arrangements." Though I aimed to shield Lucy from confusion, I yearned to seek support from my parents before navigating the divorce process. Surprisingly, Lucy opted to accompany me. "Dad, do you want to talk?" "Yes." I handed the phone to Lucy, and Liam's tone softened instantly. "Lucy, are you okay?" "Yeah, Dad. I'm sorry, but I want to be with Mom." "Why would you say that? Staying with her will make you unhappy. Come back home." "Dad, that's not true." Lucy replied calmly, revealing a surprising maturity. Mom tried her best all the time. I've seen it. But you and Grandma kept saying hurtful things about her paintings. I'm worried about Mom. That's why I want to stay with her. With that, Lucy ended the call and gave me a bashful smile. I patted her head. Although it seemed we had no allies in that house, Lucy had been watching. In the following days, Liam bombarded my parents' home with calls and letters, all demanding Lucy's return. It's okay. Everything will be all right. Yeah, thanks, Mom. I continued my work as an illustrator, maintaining a calm demeanor while working from my parents' place. Unlike my in-laws, my parents contributed to household chores, and we supported each other. Naturally, I spent more time with Lucy. She asked me to teach her how to draw and help her with her studies, and I always responded with a smile. Alongside household chores, my art also demanded my attention. Still, I never mistreated Lucy, who had chosen to stay with me. As the day of my solo exhibition approached, my father couldn't attend due to work, but I decided to take my mother and Lucy. Then, one day, a knock echoed at my parents' front door. Lucy eagerly ran to answer it, but halted abruptly, returning to me in a frightened voice, "Mom, Dad's here." I had anticipated Liam might show up in person eventually. I took a deep breath. I had no intention of letting him in or even opening the door. I planned to send him away immediately. "What do you want?" I tried to sound as cold as possible. To my surprise, Liam's reply was, "Emma, please come back." I was wrong. "What are you trying to do?" I asked. His sincerity seemed genuine. In a weak voice, Liam continued, "My parents aren't doing anything. They're just eating fast food, and the laundry's been piling up since the day you left." It seemed my expectations were coming true. With Liam out for work most of the time, this situation must be challenging for him. Wearing wrinkled clothes repeatedly and unable to maintain a tidy appearance, finding new jobs was likely difficult. The house was descending into chaos. "Please help me out. I wasn't doing anything in that house either, right?" I let out a sigh. "Your mother said I was a wife who didn't even do housework. You agreed so too." I was wrong. My mom claimed she was doing all the housework, and I believed her. I was fooled. He spoke as if he were a victim, despite joining my mother-in-law in bad-mouthing me. "Don't you have any intention to do housework yourself? I've never even held a knife, and I don't know how to use the washing machine. That doesn't mean you can rely on me." Essentially, he wanted me to return and handle the piled-up chores. What a joke. I'm never going back to that house. The day I left, I let go of all my feelings for Liam. There's no way I'm going to feel sorry for him now. I'm not your maid. Isn't it a wife's duty to do housework? Liam's tone became harsh. Beyond exasperation, I calmly responded, "I don't want to be your wife anymore. Every morning, I rose early to prepare your lunch, yet never received a word of gratitude from you. There were days when the disappointment cut deeper upon seeing the untouched lunch. I diligently hung the laundry and ironed them to perfection, striving for a wrinkle-free result. Do you understand? I've been carrying out these chores 365 days a year without a single thank you. So what's your point? Isn't that what wives are supposed to do? If there had been gratitude, we could have been a normal couple. I feel more strongly now that we'll never truly understand each other. Liam didn't get it, and he didn't want to. He was just temporarily down on his luck. Deep down, he hasn't changed. I'm going to live on my own strength. You should try hard on your own too. Hey, Emma." Liam continued, but I ignored him and returned to the living room. Despite Liam banging on the door, he eventually seemed to give up and left. My exhibition turned out to be reasonably successful. Walking around the venue hand in hand with Lucy, my mother beside us, she pointed to a visitor and remarked, "Isn't that Liam?" Ha! I was taken aback. Facing Liam directly would be awkward, and it might bother Lucy. With these thoughts, I observed the visitor's face. He wore his hat low, but it was unmistakably Liam. "Mom, watch Lucy for me." "All right." I left Lucy with my mother and approached Liam. speaking quietly to avoid disturbing others. "What are you doing here? Have you really made painting your job?" His tone lacked spirit, and his clothes appeared wrinkled and unkempt. Liam's eyes briefly met mine. "But you're not selling any, right? Look over there." I pointed to a certain corner of the venue. "The painting on the wall is a new piece. Below it, it shows sold. That painting's already been snagged by a private collector, and it has a price tag. Want to know how much?" "No, I'm good." Liam took a step back, looking startled. The sight of my artwork being sold seemed to shock him. "Excuse me, do you have a moment?" A local newspaper reporter approached, expressing their intent to feature the exhibition in an upcoming article, along with an interview. For freelancers, networking is crucial, and this was a welcome opportunity. Liam's eyes widened. "You're really making it big, aren't you?" "Well, let's just say I make more than you do," I replied matter-of-factly. Liam looked flustered, letting out a groan. He seemed to grasp the reality that our incomes were just enough to get by, and his parents' social security checks weren't the financial cushion they believed them to be. "Emma, you're really something." "What are you talking about now?" I walked away from Liam, but he followed closely. "Emma, let's start over. Paint as much as you want. I'll help with the chores. Please come back." I didn't respond. His plea felt too self-serving, leaving me dumbfounded. Then I noticed someone watching, a ragged-looking couple. It was Liam's parents. Standing in front of my sold painting, their eyes darted between the sold sign and me. They didn't even glance at the artwork. They were simply astonished that my paintings could turn into cash. "Liam, how did you get in without the ticket?" When I told them I'm the husband of the illustrator, they let me in. "You mean ex-husband?" I corrected, irritation evident. By tearing up the ticket, Liam had severed any benefits from my artwork. Now he had no choice but to rely on his income and the meager social security his parents boasted about. "Excuse me, this artwork is wonderful." "Thank you." Another customer complimented, leading to another painting being sold. Liam and his parents stood there, visibly stunned. From the next day, relentless calls from Liam flooded in. "Dad, what the heck happened? I wonder what should we do?" His attempts to reconcile were unprecedented. After some thought, I reported Liam to the police as a stalker. Despite receiving a warning, Liam persisted with his calls and stalking, resulting in police custody. "Me? A stalker? You gotta be kidding! I'm her husband." That was his futile argument, considering we were already divorced. His parents, embarrassed and feeling the judgmental gaze of their neighbors, distanced themselves from Liam as if fleeing. Regardless of where they went, rumors followed. My family never approved of my job. "That must have been tough," I shared during an interview. I'd opened up about the agony of not receiving recognition for my work from Liam and his parents. The headline in the local paper read, "Rising Star Creator, a Tragic Heroine." Despite adversity, she continued drawing. Looking at the article, it felt as though it was about someone else. Being labeled a tragic heroine wasn't as glamorous as it sounded. It was indeed challenging. However, things had changed for the better. I now had my daughter, my parents, and fans who appreciated my work. "Liam, the very thing you rejected had this much power." Thanks to the feature in the local paper, my reputation as an author improved. I started receiving more work and could support my daughter on my income alone. Staying at my parents' house felt uncomfortable, so I rented an apartment near my daughter's school. My parents seemed disappointed, offering, "You can always stay with us. You've been through a lot in that house." "Thanks, but it's my life," I said, reminding myself not to rely on others, a lesson taught by Liam and his parents. I'm going to take that lesson to heart. One day, my daughter brought a friend home from school. Adjusting well after transferring, despite the inconveniences caused by my circumstances, she proudly introduced me. "My mother's an artist." "That's so cool." Since moving, my daughter sounded more mature. She switched from calling me mom to mother and began practicing drawing more seriously. Previously, she doodled random drawings, but now she showed interest in the tools I used for work and spent more time watching me. I'm gonna be like you, mother. Really? That makes me happy. Want to try using this pen? Really? She blushed with excitement, reminding me of the joy I felt when I got new art supplies. Like mother, like daughter. At first, Lucy couldn't draw a straight line. Every attempt resulted in warped lines, creating a jumbled mess. However, after many tries, Lucy's drawings started to resemble actual pictures, and her use of paints and colored pencils showed promise. Apparently, she was one of the best artists in her class. Look at this, the teacher complimented her drawing. Really? Let me see. I was truly amazed. Witnessing my daughter's growth made me incredibly proud. I had only taught Lucy the basics, breaking down the human body into sections for easier drawing and explaining the relationship between light and shadow. Beyond that, she must have learned by watching me work or studying my finished paintings. Lucy might be even more talented than me, and I honestly believed it. Lucy gave a shy smile, expressing her determination. I'm gonna keep on drawing for Lucy, for my fans, and most importantly, for myself, who never gave up on art no matter the circumstances.
My mother-in-law threw out my things because she didn't want a daughter-in-law who planned to give birth at her parents' house. She dragged me out of the house while I was still in my pajamas, not even letting me put on my shoes. All I had was my phone, so I called my mom, who luckily was nearby. I waited for her at a local diner. When my mom and sister heard what happened, they were furious. They made a call that marked the start of trouble for my mother-in-law and husband. My name is Katie, and I'm 28 years old. I married Sam, who is 30 a year ago. His father runs a big company, and Sam is being groomed to be the next CEO. Right now, he's training at one of their smaller companies. I met Sam at work, but I didn't know about his family's business until shortly before we got married. He hadn't told me that he was going to be the next CEO until then. I was completely surprised when Sam told me he was going to be the CEO of the main company. At first, I couldn't believe it because he seemed so capable and well-liked. But after he explained, it all made sense, and suddenly I was the wife of a future CEO. After we got married, Sam moved to the main company's office, while I continued working at my job. My father-in-law told me, "I've heard you're a young leader at your workplace. Keep up the good work," Sam said. However, my mother-in-law had a different view. Why would a wife neglect her home to work? She asked, strongly opposed to me having a job. I thought there wouldn't be any issues since we weren't living together, but I was mistaken. Sam's parents wanted us to live with them. It started when my father-in-law said, "I'm very busy. It would be nice to have someone take care of us." Sam also agreed with the idea of living together. "I'm concerned about Mom too. I've grown up in this house, and moving now would be inconvenient," he explained. I had almost no chance to oppose living together. When they asked my opinion, my mother-in-law said, "Since everyone seems to think it's a good idea, Katie, do you have any objections?" At that point, I had no choice but to agree to live with my in-laws. Unexpectedly, once we moved in together, my mother-in-law, who had opposed my job, started making life difficult for me, pushing me to quit. She dumped all the household chores on me, even though I was working. If she wasn't satisfied with how I did things, she'd make me redo them. At first, she complained about small things like a speck of dust or a stray hair. I tried to learn from her feedback and clean those spots better. Then she started checking unusual places like behind the TV or between dressers for dust, places that aren't typically cleaned regularly. I thought, these aren't part of normal cleaning routines. So I finally spoke up. "I can't clean these spots every day. I work just like Sam does. I'll do a thorough cleaning on weekends, so there's no need to redo everything today, right?" My mother-in-law got angry and snapped back. "How dare you talk back to me like that? Times have changed. It's unheard of for a daughter-in-law to be so bold." In her anger, she called for Sam. "Sam," Katie yelled at me. I had gently pointed out areas she missed while cleaning, thinking it was for her benefit. But she portrayed herself as the victim, shedding fake tears to Sam. I hoped Sam would understand and support me. "Mom, Katie is working too. Maybe you could go easy on her," I thought. But reality was different. "Why did you upset Mom like that? She was only trying to help. Why are you getting upset?" Sam scolded me. In the end, Sam sided with his mother. That's when I realized the only person I could rely on in that house was my father-in-law. But he was rarely around due to his busy schedule. I had to fend for myself. That's how it went. After that, I stopped confronting my mother-in-law. It didn't matter what I said. She would always tell Sam, and I would end up feeling down. It seemed better just to quietly listen to her. That's the approach I started to take, knowing Sam wouldn't support me. It was the only way to have some peace in that house. I lived like this for a year, but then I started feeling unwell and decided to see a doctor. It turned out I wasn't just sick, I was pregnant. I wondered how my in-laws would react to the news. With a glimmer of hope, I first told my husband. "You know how I've been feeling off lately. I went to the doctor, and guess what? I'm pregnant," I said. "Wow, that's great. So I'm going to be a dad, huh? Can't wait. Do we know the gender yet?" Sam exclaimed. "Not yet. Does it matter to you?" I asked. "Of course it does. It has to be a boy," Sam replied. As I suspected, Sam was his parents' only child. I had a feeling that having a boy might be important for someone to take over the family business. What if it turns out to be a girl? I started to worry about how the baby's gender might be received. "Don't worry, I'm sure it's a boy," Sam reassured me. But I wasn't so confident. We decided to tell his parents only after finding out the gender. Eventually, we learned it was a girl. I was thrilled, though I had no intention of discriminating based on gender. Sam, however, reacted differently. "What? A girl? Are you sure? Get it checked again," he said. Seeing Sam's disappointment made me anxious about how my mother-in-law would react. I dreaded telling her. Despite Sam's initial reaction, we couldn't avoid sharing the news with our in-laws. Eventually, I persuaded Sam to break the news to his parents. "Well, I'm pregnant," he announced. "That's wonderful, Katie. We're finally going to have our first grandchild," my father-in-law exclaimed happily. My mother-in-law, however, asked right away, "So, what's the gender?" With hesitation, I replied, "It's a girl." "A girl, huh? I hope she's as lovely as you, Katie," my father-in-law responded warmly, seemingly unconcerned about the gender. But my mother-in-law couldn't hide her disappointment. "A girl? Not a boy? It has to be a boy for it to make sense for Sam," she muttered. I was shocked to hear her say that, but my father-in-law quickly intervened. "Honey, why would you say that? Whether it's a boy or a girl, they're still our grandchild. Can't you just be happy?" After my father-in-law scolded her, my mother-in-law seemed a bit down, but I knew it wouldn't last long. Sure enough, as soon as he left for work, she confronted me. "Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can slack off on the housework. You're not planning to quit your job, are you? If not, keep up with your chores. Pregnancy isn't an illness, you know." Hearing pregnancy isn't an illness from another woman, especially one who had given birth herself, surprised me. It made me question if staying here was the right choice for having my child. My family's home is about a 3-hour train ride away. My dad passed away early, and now my mom and older sister live there together. Maybe if I explained everything to them, they might let me stay with them. I started to feel that giving birth at my in-laws' place might not be the safest option, and remembered my family's home could be a better choice. I decided to contact my mom right away. "Mom, it's me, Katie. What's up?" "It's rare for you to call. I'm pregnant, and I was wondering if I could come home to give birth." "You're pregnant? You should have told us earlier. Congratulations. Come home for the delivery, of course, that's fine. But have you gotten permission from your in-laws?" "Well, not yet. If you discuss it properly and they agree, I don't mind at all." Mom advised me to discuss it with my in-laws. For the safety of my baby, I decided to go home for the delivery. When I talked to my husband about it, he casually said, "Going home for the birth? Oh, I guess that's fine. My mom's here too, so things should be okay around the house." He agreed quickly. Anticipating possible opposition from my mother-in-law, I decided to talk to my father-in-law. After careful consideration, I thought it would be better for everyone if I went home for the delivery. "Would that be all right?" I asked. Initially, he looked surprised, but then said, "If that's what you want, Katie, then it's probably best. I won't oppose. Could you possibly talk to my mother-in-law on my behalf?" I asked. "Well, I'll tell her," he replied, seemingly agreeing to my request. With his support, I got permission to go home for the delivery without any problems. On the day I was supposed to leave, I woke up to find that my packed luggage was missing. Unfortunately, both my husband and father-in-law had already left for work. "Do you know where my luggage is?" I hesitated to ask my mother-in-law, but I had no other option. "Oh, that luggage. I got rid of it all. I don't need a daughter-in-law who causes so much trouble. Don't ever come back," she shouted at me as she pushed me out the front door. I hadn't even had time to put on my shoes. All I had was my smartphone. I was practically in my pajamas, and with a loud click, the front door locked behind me. This meant my mother-in-law was serious. She really wanted me out, that much was clear. I felt like if I stayed there, that door would never open for me again. With that thought, I started walking. But it was the peak of summer, and walking barefoot outside was unbearable, so I sought refuge in a nearby diner. Using my phone, the only possession I had, I called my mom. She was furious and promised to be there within an hour. Luckily, she wasn't far away. I spent that hour at the diner, waiting anxiously. When my mom arrived, she wasted no time and drove me straight back to our family home. My sister was already there waiting for us. I poured out everything about my mother-in-law's actions and my husband's indifference. After hearing my story, my mom and sister exchanged some words quietly, leaving me unsure of what they were discussing. The next morning, being at my family home was a breath of fresh air. I was asked to fetch the newspaper, and when I opened the door, I found my mother-in-law and husband kneeling outside. "Katie, I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. Please don't sever ties with my husband's company," my mother-in-law pleaded. "Katie, I'm sorry too. Please, can we continue doing business with my dad's company?" my husband added. Confused, I had no idea what they were talking about. Then suddenly, my mom and sister appeared from behind. "What on earth are you two doing causing a scene this early?" My mom's voice was stern. "What does resuming business mean?" To avoid any further disturbance, my mom invited them inside our home. Once settled, my husband started explaining. "Would you please consider doing business again with my dad's company? My mom and sister manage the company my dad left behind." Curious, I asked my mom, "What does it mean that they're doing business with my father-in-law's company?" "Yes, they work with one of their subsidiary companies," my mom replied. "Exactly. It's a major company within their group, second only to the main office, and their top client is Katie's mom's company," my husband added. I had no idea. Apparently my husband was misinformed. This was news to me too. LOL. Come to think of it, I remember my mother and father-in-law mentioning something about always being indebted to each other when they first met. I recalled. I cannot continue doing business with a family that would send my daughter out in such a state with just her phone. "I'm stopping our business dealings," my mom declared firmly. My mother-in-law looked visibly shaken and pleaded, "Please, I beg you. I'll do anything. Could you reconsider stopping the dealings with my husband's company?" At that moment, my sister chimed in with a smirk. "You said you'd do anything, right? So you'll agree to Katie's divorce, and naturally you'll pay alimony and child support, right?" I silently thought, bringing up my divorce now, well played. Actually, before contacting my mom yesterday, I had spoken to my husband. His response was, "It's what you deserve, isn't it?" I found myself agreeing with my mom's decision. I no longer had any remaining affection for him. I would have brought up divorce anyway if my sister hadn't. But thanks to her timing, the conversation seemed to be turning in our favor. My mother-in-law then asked reluctantly, "Yes, even if it means agreeing to a divorce, will you resume business with my husband's company?" With a confident smirk, my mom took out her phone and began speaking into it. "It seems this lady here agrees to my daughter's divorce." From the speaker, my father-in-law's voice echoed, "Got it. Hey, is Jenna there? Jenna, I'm divorcing you, and Sam, you're fired." Those were the conditions set for resuming business. Additionally, my mom declared, "I cannot forgive the two of you for how you treated Katie. You both deserve to be punished." As a result of my father-in-law's decision, my mother-in-law lost her husband, and my husband lost his job, income, and family support. The story continued with a challenging divorce between my in-laws, which eventually went through, reportedly settled by a top-notch lawyer from my father-in-law's side. During the divorce proceedings, assets were divided, and my mother-in-law ended up paying a significant sum in compensation to my husband and me. I, too, went through with the divorce. Living harmoniously with a husband who only followed his mother's wishes was no longer an option for me. I received compensation for the pain caused by my mother-in-law and husband, along with child support for our unborn child. They paid a significant amount from their savings but had to take on debt. With my father-in-law and mom's influence, my husband struggled to find a new job and eventually had to switch careers. He quickly moved into customer service, but underestimated the role and faced numerous complaints, leading to his swift termination. Now he's living with his mom and barely scraping by with daily wage jobs. My mother-in-law and husband, once accustomed to a lavish lifestyle thanks to my father-in-law, now reside in a small one-bedroom apartment. Their once close relationship has soured, and they argue frequently. As for my ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband, I wonder if there's any hope or joy left in their lives. Meanwhile, I safely gave birth at home to a healthy baby girl. With the support of my mom and sister, I plan to focus on raising her. Once things settle down, I'm thinking of working at my mom's company. I did inform my ex-husband about our daughter's birth, but there hasn't been any follow-up from him. It seems he doesn't care much. All I expect from him is to ensure he pays child support. I have no intention of letting him see our daughter for the rest of her life. From now on, my focus is moving forward and living a fulfilling life with my daughter, supported by those around us.
Having made the decision to marry my boyfriend Ethan and paying a visit to his family's abode for introductions on the appointed day, I encountered a startling rejection from all his kin. Their chilling words echoed, "Never reach out to us again. Your voice is unwelcome." It seemed their upbringing, steeped in adulation for their physical charms, had fostered an environment of harshness and envy towards those who possessed what they lacked. Regrettably, I found myself the unwitting target of their jealousy, with even my father-in-law and brother-in-law silently aligning with their rejection. Yet, several months passed, I had the sweet satisfaction of orchestrating a masterful revenge upon these four. My name is Amy, age 27, now basking in serene and joyful days encircled by love for my husband, our cherubic child, and my own parents. The genesis of this newfound contentment traces back 3 years, when I was just 24. It all began with Ethan, my former colleague turned beau, who proposed to me. Bonding over our shared love for cinema, our friendship blossomed into romance through countless movie dates on our days off. Ethan's gentle demeanor and universal amiability endeared him to many at work. Averse to conflict, he possessed a forgiving nature that endeared him to all. From the moment I joined the company, Ethan intrigued me, so when he finally mustered the courage to ask me out, I was elated, eagerly anticipating each day at work. During moments of professional missteps and personal lows, he offered unwavering support, fostering a natural desire within me. I want to spend my life with this man. Ethan harbored ambitions of launching his own business down the line, and I was eager to stand by his side, offering unwavering support every step of the way. When he proposed to me, my heart soared with joy. There was no hesitation. I accepted his proposal without a second thought, resolved to spend my life with him. The weekend following Ethan's heartfelt proposal, we promptly journeyed to my family's abode, introducing Ethan to my parents and sharing our plans to wed. Ethan's warmth and charm extended effortlessly to my family, effortlessly bonding with my father over drinks and conversation. My parents, enchanted by Ethan's demeanor, readily embraced our union, reveling in our shared happiness. Witnessing Ethan effortlessly blend into my family dynamic, I couldn't help but feel blessed to have him in my life. As the weekend waned, our sights turned to meeting Ethan's family. While I realized I hadn't gleaned much about them from Ethan, I brushed aside any concerns, presuming his independence might have led to infrequent contact with his parents. The eve of our visit, during a casual phone call with Ethan discussing our plans for the morrow, he cryptically mentioned, "My parents might come off a bit peculiar, but don't dwell on it too much." His words sparked a twinge of apprehension. But with the early morning looming, I chose to set aside any worries and retire for the night around 10 p.m. The following day, Ethan and I rendered his vows at the station, embarking together towards his family residence. It marked my inaugural visit to his familial abode, and despite my attempts to quell my nerves, a persistent jitteriness lingered throughout the morning. Walking alongside Ethan, his words seemed to blur amidst the frantic thudding of my heart. Before us loomed a majestic mansion, reminiscent of a fairy tale castle. The sprawling garden only intensified my trepidation as I pondered Ethan's upbringing in such opulent surroundings. Yet, his reassuring smile offered some solace as he gently remarked, "Feeling nervous? It's all right, let's proceed." Upon a grand entrance, my mother-in-law greeted us warmly, her graceful demeanor and impeccable appearance exuding elegance. Her welcoming demeanor momentarily eased my apprehension. Once inside, the rest of the family, save for my mother-in-law, greeted me with smiles, alleviating some of my unease. Finding myself warmly embraced, I settled onto the sofa, engaging in pleasant conversation over dinner before proudly announcing our engagement to all present. Ethan's family beamed with delight, particularly my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who expressed their excitement at welcoming me into the family with endearing words. "We're thrilled to have such a charming addition to our family." Their warm reception touched me deeply, fostering a sense of belonging. As the pleasant conversation flowed, I learned more about Ethan's family, His father managed a successful company specializing in package tours, while his brother, an executive director within the same company, harbored aspirations of eventually assuming its leadership. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law gracefully balanced their roles as homemakers, enriching their lives with pursuits like dance classes and flower arrangement lessons. My sister-in-law, radiating confidence with her impeccable appearance, left a lasting impression. Meanwhile, my father-in-law's kindness and affable demeanor put me at ease, his engaging conversation effortlessly quelling any nerves. I found solace in his amiable presence, genuinely grateful for his warmth. However, the harmonious atmosphere was briefly disrupted by a question from my father-in-law, inquiring about my employment status at the same company as Ethan. I clarified that I held a permanent position, having joined as a regular employee following my graduation from Harvard University. His pride in my accomplishments was palpable, his admiration evident as he praised my achievements. The ensuing praise from both my father-in-law and Ethan left me feeling slightly embarrassed yet profoundly touched by their words of admiration and support. In reality, my journey led me to a prestigious university in the United States, where I dedicated myself to studies even at the expense of sleep during my high school years. My parents, despite limited means, toiled relentlessly to afford my college education. Fueled by a deep-seated determination to secure a promising career and ultimately repay my parents' sacrifices, I poured my heart into every endeavor. Engrossed in lively conversation with others, I couldn't help but notice the sudden silence from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. A pang of apprehension gripped me, prompting a frantic search for a change of topic. Observing a striking arrangement of flowers adorning the table, I ventured a compliment only to be met with a sharp retort from my mother-in-law, questioning the sincerity of my interest in housewives' pastimes, given my professional stature. Bewildered by her abrupt shift in demeanor, I struggled to comprehend the underlying hostility. Echoing her sentiments, my sister-in-law insinuated that my academic background might lead me to dismiss their pursuits as trivial. I never intended such implications, yet found myself at a loss for words, choking back tears of frustration. Ethan swiftly intervened, rebuking their baseless assumptions and defending my character. Though his words offered solace, I remained mute, unable to muster a response, my gaze fixed downward. Surveying the room, I noted my father-in-law, inebriated and slumbering on the sofa since noon, alongside my disinterested brother-in-law, idly scrolling through his phone. Sensing the palpable tension, Ethan tactfully suggested bringing the gathering to a close, offering a much-needed reprieve from the stifling atmosphere. As we made our way back to the station, Ethan offered his apologies, explaining, "I'm sorry about today. My mom and sister have quite the pride. They're particularly touchy about their high school education." Later, Ethan revealed that his mother-in-law had worked at a flower shop straight out of high school, where his father-in-law had become enamored with her at first sight. A captivating beauty, she drew numerous customers to the shop daily. Through persistent pursuit, his father-in-law won her affections, and they eventually married, with him still seemingly wrapped around her finger to this day. Similarly, his sister-in-law, a striking woman, had reconnected with Ethan's brother-in-law at a high school reunion in their early 20s. Enchanted by her transformation, he pursued her relentlessly until they became a couple. Like his father-in-law, Ethan's brother-in-law appeared to acquiesce to his wife's wishes without question. Despite my advanced education, I struggled to comprehend their insecurities. They were both beautiful women with devoted husbands who adored and protected them. Yet, I couldn't shake off a lingering sense of unease, questioning whether marriage would truly be as harmonious as I had envisioned. Nonetheless, with the family's blessings secured, we forged ahead with wedding plans, hoping that open communication would bridge any divides. "Rest assured, Amy, I'll always stand by your side," Ethan reassured me, instilling a sense of optimism within me. After months of meticulous planning, the day before our wedding arrived, only to be disrupted by an unexpected phone call from Ethan's mother. As Ethan's voice rose in disbelief, I listened in shock to his revelation that his parents had suddenly decided not to attend the wedding due to a forgotten trip they had booked for the same day. Stunned and bewildered by this unforeseen turn of events, we attempted to reach them for an explanation to no avail, met only by the incessant ringing of unanswered calls. Perplexed by the abrupt turn of events, we hastened to Ethan's parents' house, only to find it dark and deserted, indicating their absence. I voiced my concerns to Ethan, recalling the tense atmosphere during my previous visit, questioning if I had inadvertently offended his mother and sister. Ethan attributed their demeanor to their prideful nature, acknowledging that highly intelligent individuals often bore stubborn tendencies, but he remained uncertain of any specific grievances they held. Puzzled by his father's absence as well, Ethan explained that both his father and brother-in-law were inclined to defer to their wives, likely aligning with them to avoid discord. His distress was palpable, leaving me at a loss for words. Ultimately, our attempts to contact Ethan's family proved futile, compelling us to proceed with the wedding sans their presence. We were left bewildered by the unfolding events, questioning the reasons behind their absence. Even if they genuinely forgot about their trip, I struggled to comprehend why they would prioritize it over their son's wedding. Upon learning of Ethan's family's absence, my own parents expressed understanding, though their expressions betrayed a hint of complexity, burdening me with a sense of guilt for causing them distress on what should have been a joyous occasion. During the reception, murmurs circulated among our guests, questioning the absence of Ethan's parents. Even our boss, who graciously offered a toast, inquired about their whereabouts, leaving us grappling for an appropriate response. Faced with the dilemma of revealing the truth, we opted to deflect inquiries by attributing their absence to illness. What was meant to be a day of celebration turned into one fraught with mental exhaustion. Days later, when Ethan and I visited his parents to relay the events of the ceremony, his mother's nonchalant demeanor and lack of remorse stung deeply. Suppressing my sadness to maintain familial harmony, I responded with a strained smile, concealing the hurt that lingered within. Ethan's voice cut through the tension like a knife, his words echoing with a mixture of disbelief and frustration. Canceling the day before the wedding, with all our relatives absent, is that even acceptable? If you had no intention of attending, you shouldn't have accepted the invitation in the first place. His sister-in-law's response only added fuel to the fire. I would have attended if Amy wasn't the bride, she declared coldly, leaving me utterly bewildered, my head spinning with confusion. Before I could make sense of her words, Ethan's mother-in-law launched her own accusation, attempting to deflect blame onto me. Don't lay all the blame on us. I wanted to witness my son's special day, but Amy ruined it. I'm a victim here too. I demand an apology. Ethan, sensing my shock, rallied to my defense. How can you blame Amy? She's done nothing wrong, he retorted, his voice tinged with incredulity. But the silence of Ethan's father-in-law, until now, was ominous. When he finally spoke, it was with a venomous intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Enough is enough. How dare you barge in here on our day off to complain? Is that all you came for? Get out. His words were like a slap in the face, and before we could even process what was happening, we found ourselves forcibly ejected from their home. As I hastily slipped on my shoes at the entrance, my mind reeled with shock and disbelief, struggling to comprehend the sudden turn of events. A sharp sting on the sole of my foot jolted me into a panic. Ouch! I exclaimed, lifting my foot to find a caterpillar wriggling inside my shoe. Recoiling with disgust, I hastily kicked off my shoe and fled outside, releasing the creature into the open air. As I stood, one shoe on, catching my breath, I noticed my mother-in-law and sister-in-law watching, their laughter laced with a malicious edge. "Are you all right?" they asked, their concern ringing hollow. Eager to escape the uncomfortable situation, I mumbled an apology and made a swift exit, only to be halted by my mother-in-law's unexpected words. "Amy, please refrain from involving yourself in our affairs except for weddings and funerals," she said, her tone final as she shut the door, leaving me bewildered and hurt. What had I done to deserve such treatment? All I wanted was to foster a positive relationship with Ethan's family. On the journey home, Ethan showered me with apologies, assuring me that I needn't endure any further interactions with his family. Despite his efforts to console me, I couldn't shake a feeling of guilt and confusion. The revelation that my presence had caused such disdain from his mother-in-law and sister-in-law weighed heavily on my mind, leaving me questioning my worth. The next day brought a new wave of distress as my entire body erupted in intense itching. Rushing to the mirror, I was greeted with the sight of fiery red swelling covering my skin. A visit to the dermatologist revealed that the cause was caterpillar stings from the previous day. The itching was unbearable, robbing me of sleep for weeks on end. Recalling an unsettling incident at Ethan's house, where I had noticed my brother-in-law tampering with my shoes at the front door, I couldn't shake the feeling of distrust towards my in-laws, and just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Ethan fell ill and was hospitalized with stomach pains, diagnosed with a suspected gastric ulcer. Worried sick, I insisted he take time off work and accompany him to the hospital for further tests, grappling with the mounting challenges that seemed to plague us relentlessly. I hesitated, recalling the blunt instruction to only reach out in the event of a wedding or funeral. Yet, I couldn't bring myself to keep Ethan's hospitalization a secret from his parents. Gathering my courage, I dialed their number, my hand trembling as the phone rang, nerves twisting my stomach into knots. The mere sound of my mother-in-law's voice filled me with a profound sense of dislike, a testament to the strained relationship that had developed between us. "Hello," she answered. "It's Amy. I apologize for not keeping in touch. There's something I need to tell you," I began tentatively. "Ethan has been hospitalized. They suspect it might be a gastric ulcer, so he's undergoing tests," I explained, hoping for a shred of concern or empathy. "A gastric ulcer, huh? Probably from overworking," she dismissed callously. "Please spare me from such trivial matters. I'm busy," she added, brushing off Ethan's health concerns with callous indifference. "Trivial? Don't you care about Ethan?" I retorted, my frustration bubbling over. "I won't bother you anymore. I'll call Ethan directly," I concluded, my voice thick with disappointment. Before I could hang up, my brother-in-law abruptly took the phone. "You're too persistent. Can't you read the room?" he chastised. "Whether Ethan's in the hospital or not, your constant calls are irritating," he snapped before ending the call abruptly. The abrupt click of the line cutting off left me reeling, a surge of indignation coursing through me. The callous rejection from my in-laws, their harsh words cutting deeper than I had anticipated, shattered any lingering hope of reconciliation. In that moment, I made a solemn vow to myself. If they don't want me to contact them, fine. I want nothing to do with that family anymore. I'll never reach out to them again, no matter the circumstances. Following Ethan's recovery, which proved to be a mild gastric ulcer, he diligently adhered to medication, experiencing a notable improvement in his health. I recounted the entire ordeal to Ethan, who met my explanation with unwavering determination. "Let's distance ourselves from my family," he declared firmly. "The only person who matters to me now is you, Amy. If they can't accept you, then they're not family to me, regardless of blood ties." A year later, Ethan took the leap to pursue his long-standing aspiration of establishing a software sales business, leveraging his prior job experience. His relentless dedication paid off as he tirelessly worked towards realizing his dream. While our venture was still in its nascent stage, witnessing even a fraction of Ethan's vision materialize filled me with profound joy. Our happiness only multiplied with the arrival of our healthy baby boy a year into Ethan's entrepreneurial journey. My parents shared in our elation, frequently visiting us despite the lengthy journey from their home to ours. We opted not to inform Ethan's parents of our son's birth, certain that their indifference would remain unchanged. Their silence following our earlier confrontation offered a sense of relief, freeing us from the burdensome ties of a strained relationship. Several months later, as the global pandemic of the new coronavirus swept across the world, our country declared a state of emergency, urging citizens to stay indoors. News broadcasts were inundated with discussions of the pandemic's impact, particularly on industries such as restaurants and tourism. My heart ached for those affected, though I couldn't help but wonder about Ethan's father's package tour company. Yet it was a passing thought, and any satisfaction I derived from imagining its plight was fleeting. Despite the challenging circumstances, Ethan's business flourished. While the initial phase of our entrepreneurial journey saw some financial instability, recent months had brought a surge in income, surpassing even Ethan's earnings as an employee. Our future looked promising, a testament to our resilience in the face of adversity. During this period, Ethan began receiving numerous calls from his parents' home. Despite the persistent attempts at communication, Ethan appeared determined to avoid any interaction, intentionally ignoring the calls and disregarding voicemails left behind. I often reassured him, "You don't need to worry about me. It's all right to reach out to them." While I held a deep-seated disdain for his family, I couldn't shake the guilt of causing Ethan to sever ties with his own parents. Yet Ethan remained resolute in his stance, affirming, "Amy is my top priority, not my parents. If they can't accept you, regardless of their parental status, I can't hold them in high regard." I felt a mix of remorse and admiration for Ethan's unwavering loyalty. Despite Ethan's steadfast avoidance, the persistence of his parents was relentless. Daily calls went unanswered, and then one day, a letter arrived from his family home, bearing a startling message. Our business is teetering on the edge of bankruptcy and urgent financial discussions are necessary, it read. Their audacity was staggering, considering the estranged relationship they had imposed. We refused to entertain their demands, opting instead to let them face the consequences of their actions. Let them face the repercussions of their decisions, I remarked. Soon enough, my own phone began to ring incessantly. Occupied with work, I couldn't attend the calls, but a voicemail left a clear indication of Ethan's continued avoidance. It seemed they had resorted to contacting me despite my explicit instructions to the contrary. Reluctantly, I listened to the message left on my voicemail, which simply stated, "Is this Amy's number? If Ethan persists in his silence, I'll visit in person. Let him know." 2 days following the voicemail, Ethan and I found ourselves enjoying a rare day off together at home. Just as we settled in after lunch, the doorbell chimed, signaling an unexpected visitor. Peering through the monitor, I was met with the sight of my 4 in-laws standing at the doorstep. Surprised, I looked at Ethan, who let out a weary sigh. "We could just ignore them. They'll eventually give up," he suggested. However, I couldn't shake the sense of pity. "They've come all this way, it wouldn't hurt to let them in," I countered. After a brief moment of contemplation, Ethan relented, unlocking the door to face whatever awaited us on the other side. Pitiful. Never would I entertain such thoughts about our cunning in-laws. I resolved silently, deliberately withholding the voicemail's revelation from Ethan. Everything was orchestrated to draw them into our home. My faint surprise at their arrival was a well-rehearsed act. I knew their persistence would eventually lead them to our doorstep. There was a method to my apparent madness. The true retaliation had yet to unfold, and it was time for a showdown. As the entire in-law clan stood at our front door, marching in without restraint upon entry, I couldn't help but express my exasperation. "Is it really that difficult to just open a door? It's simply uncouth," I remarked with thinly veiled frustration. Observing our son engrossed in play with his toys on the floor, Ethan's mother couldn't resist a remark. "Whose child is this?" she inquired. "He's our son," I replied matter-of-factly. "Ah, I recall now. Since you insisted we cease contact, I saw no need to inform you of his arrival." "Clearly, your interest is lacking," she retorted dismissively. Her contemptuous gaze met mine, and she muttered disparagingly under her breath. I found myself relishing a moment and turned to address Ethan's father. "What brings you here today?" A courtesy call would have been appreciated, I stated, my tone tinged with sarcasm. Ethan's father bristled at my remark. "Didn't you receive the letter?" he retorted sharply. "You mean the one that arrived 2 days ago?" I countered, noting the frustration in his tone. "If you had bothered to read it, you'd know we required urgent communication," he snapped back, his anger palpable. Swiftly, I retorted, "You made it clear you wanted nothing to do with us anymore, so I assumed contacting you was unnecessary." Suppressing a grin as I faced the stern quartet, I noticed Ethan, my husband, remaining silent, allowing me to speak my mind freely. It was characteristic of him to gauge the situation adeptly. It seemed unfathomable that he was raised by parents lacking such basic sensibilities. Abruptly, my father-in-law's demeanor shifted, transitioning to a pleading tone. "Please apologize for the past. The ongoing COVID situation has devastated our travel business. With cancellations piling up and no new bookings in sight, we're facing ruin. Can't you assist me with some financial aid?" In response, I maintained, "While I empathize with your predicament, I cannot readily aid someone who previously disavowed any connection with me. However, genuine displays of sincerity might sway my decision." Outraged, my father-in-law attempted intimidation, his expression contorted in fury. Unfazed, I resolved to handle the situation on my terms. "You're free to leave if you don't agree," I declared calmly. As my father-in-law persisted in pleading, beseeching me for assistance, I remained resolute. Eventually, he implored the others to apologize, leading to a collective plea from the entire group. In response, I politely declined their appeals, maintaining my composure. Enraged, my father-in-law slammed his hand on the table, his anger palpable as he grabbed my collar, accusing me of arrogance amid his attempts at reconciliation. Taken aback by his sudden aggression, I was about to intervene when Ethan stepped in, asserting, "Dad, don't lay a hand on Amy." My father-in-law retorted, "You're choosing your wife over your parents' plea." Ethan remained firm, stating, "Amy is my priority. I can't condone mistreatment towards her, even from my own parents. I won't accept superficial apologies just for money. If you can't sincerely apologize to Amy, then leave." Enraged by Ethan's stance, my father-in-law lashed out, landing a punch squarely on Ethan's face. Shocked and struggling to comprehend the violence unfolding, I attempted to reason with my father-in-law. But he was beyond reason, relentlessly kicking Ethan as he lay on the ground. Desperate to intervene, I tried to restrain my father-in-law, but he shrugged me off, causing me to collide with the table, resulting in a painful impact to my head. As I touched the back of my head, I felt the warmth of blood trickling down my fingers. The other 3 family members, frozen in shock, watched as my father-in-law continued his rampage, demanding money and ransacking the room. In a moment of desperation, I opened the balcony window and cried out for help to the passers-by below, screaming that I was in danger. Within minutes, the police arrived. Upon their arrival, my father-in-law swiftly changed his demeanor, feigning innocence and dismissing the chaos as a misunderstanding. He attempted to paint me as intoxicated and delusional, trying to downplay his violent outburst with a disarming smile. I recounted to the officer, "Please apprehend this man. He assaulted both my husband and me, and he's been ransacking our home, demanding money." In response, my father-in-law vehemently denied the accusations and, with a burst of anger, punched a hole in the wall. Without hesitation, the officers arrested him on the spot. Subsequently, the other 3 family members were also taken in for questioning. It became apparent that my father-in-law would spend some time in jail. Thankfully, Ethan only sustained a minor injury, a cut and bruise on his cheek that healed quickly. However, the wound on the back of my head required 10 stitches, turning out to be more serious than initially thought. While I feel a pang of guilt for Ethan's injury, a sense of relief washes over me knowing that my in-laws have ceased their demands for money, possibly reflecting on their actions. As I later discovered, my father-in-law initially spoke highly of me, but my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's jealousy led them to manipulate him and my brother-in-law into treating me poorly. It's astounding how envy can alter one's behavior so drastically, leading to unforeseen consequences. It serves as a sobering reminder of the unpredictable nature of human emotions and the potential repercussions that follow. As anticipated, my in-laws faced financial ruin, their business collapsed, and their home was repossessed. Now, they reside in a modest apartment, both nearing their 70s and struggling to secure employment. My brother-in-law, once privileged by his father's position, now languishes in a cycle of gambling at the casino, nearing 50 with no marketable skills. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law's attempts at job hunting are thwarted by her demanding demeanor, leaving her confined to their home. Following that turbulent incident, my father retired, prompting a decision for my parents and us to cohabit. Surprisingly, it was Ethan who proposed this arrangement out of concern for my parents' well-being in their twilight years. With my return to work, my parents graciously care for our son during the day, providing me with a sense of security in juggling childcare and my career. Surrounded by my beloved husband, caring parents, and our cherished son, life couldn't be more fulfilling. I am determined never to take this happiness for granted and to always remain grateful for the blessings bestowed upon us. "Help me, sister," my niece Jenny said with tears in her eyes as she gave me a picture. It showed my brother, Jenny's dad, with his friends at a bar. "What's wrong, Jenny?" I asked. Before she could answer, my serious sister-in-law showed up. "What are you two doing?" she asked sternly, taking Jenny away. Alone now, I looked at the back of the picture and saw a message from my brother. It said, "If something happens to me, please take care of my daughter. My name is Alice. I'm a 32-year-old working in my family's construction company office. My older brother, who's 10 years older than me, was always seen as the one who would run the business someday. He's a hard worker, but he never seemed keen on taking over. Even though everyone, including me, thought he would, he often said, 'I enjoy carpentry. but I don't want to run the business." It became his mantra, repeated over and over. Then one day, he dropped a bombshell. "I found someone I want to marry," he announced, introducing us to Maggie. She was lively and quickly became part of our family even though she didn't live with us. "I'm getting married and moving out," he declared. "But what about the business?" I asked. "You know you're expected to take over, right?" He sighed, patting my head gently. "I don't want to cause you any trouble with Dad. We don't see eye to eye," he explained. True to his word, he married soon after and moved out. But he always stayed in touch, chatting with me about everyday stuff. "Guess what? Maggie made a delicious dinner tonight. She's a dietitian, so she keeps an eye on my high blood pressure," he'd say. I'd tease him, saying, "You never get tired of bragging about her, do you?" But seeing him happy was all that mattered to me. A few years after my brother got married, his daughter Jenny was born. After that, we started seeing them more often. They looked really happy, and Jenny was growing up well-loved by both her parents. When Jenny turned 10, there were talks in the family about patching things up with my brother. We hoped we could laugh together like we used to, but that hope didn't come true. One day while I was at work, I got a rare call from my sister-in-law. It wasn't unusual to hear from my brother, but it was strange to hear from her. Worried, I answered the phone right away. "Hey, sister-in-law." "Oh, Alice, what's going on? It's not often I hear from you. Calm down and listen. Your brother Jake had an accident at work. He fell from scaffolding because of the rain." The news hit me hard. I felt like time stopped. I called our parents, who were also at work, and we rushed to the hospital in the pouring rain. When we entered the hospital room, my brother looked so pale. Seeing him like that made the reality of the phone call sink in, and I collapsed to the floor. "Bro," I managed to say weakly, surprised by how feeble my voice sounded, and sadness washed over me. Beside the bed, my brother's wife was crying loudly, like the main character in a sad story. Her crying was so intense that it made me hold back my tears and just stare at her, feeling uneasy about her behavior. Jenny, standing next to her, looked down, her face pale, not crying but trembling as if she were scared of something. "Jenny, are you okay?" She didn't seem able to answer, still in shock from her father's death. After the wake for my brother at our home, as the relatives were grieving deeply, I found myself quietly crying in a secluded corner of the porch. The photo in the memorial portrait looked recent. My brother seemed a bit tired, but peaceful. I wondered if he had been happy. As I pondered this, I thought of Jenny. The last time we spoke, my brother, who adored his daughter, happily shared how he often took her to amusement parks and zoos. Jenny must be having a hard time after losing her dad. Thinking about her, tears filled my eyes again. But then I heard a familiar voice calling out to me. "Sis." It was Jenny, tears welling in her eyes. "Jenny, what's the matter?" I asked, wiping away my own tears, trying to stay calm. "Sis, I need your help. I'm scared. I think something bad might happen to me next." Before I could ask her to explain, she handed me something, nervously biting her lip. "Dad told me that if anything happened, I should give this to Alice," she said, repeating what our brother had told her. Jenny handed me a slightly worn brown envelope, which she had probably been holding onto for a while. "It's actually..." Just then, a cold voice interrupted us from behind, saying, "What are you doing?" I turned around to see my brother's wife, Maggie, looking stern. "I've been looking for you, Mama," Jenny said nervously. Maggie grabbed Jenny's arm and quickly took her away before I could say anything. Maggie had always been friendly and kind, but she seemed different now. It's understandable, given her husband's recent passing, but Jenny's behavior was also odd. Alone again, I opened the envelope and found an ordinary photograph inside. It looked like it was taken at a social event, with my brother smiling alongside some colleagues. I decided to flip the photo over. On the back, my brother's slightly angular handwriting read, "If anything happens to me, I want you to protect my daughter." I was shocked, speechless, just staring in surprise. I realized Jenny was asking for help, and this photo might be connected. So I decided to call a friend who was a police officer and arranged to meet him the next day. Usually the funeral would have been the day after the wake, but the crematorium wasn't available due to a certain day of the week, so we had an extra day. This gave me time to dig deeper into my brother's death. The next morning, when I got to our meeting spot, he was already there, waiting for me. "Sorry for calling you out of the blue." "Don't worry about it. I was off duty anyway. What's going on? Well, it's just, I started to explain the situation to my friend, and he listened carefully. From a police standpoint, we can't take action based on just this evidence. I understand. I wish I could do more. But remember, I'm here if you need to talk. Yeah, thanks. Just talking it through helps me think. Even after saying goodbye to my friend, I couldn't stop thinking about the photo Jenny gave me. No matter how many times I looked at it, the message from my brother remained a puzzle. What else could I do to uncover a clue? The message alone didn't give me much to go on. I realized that talking to Jenny directly might be risky with my sister-in-law around. Then, an idea struck me. Maybe I could find something in my brother's belongings. Unable to sit still, I hurried to my sister-in-law's house. I'm sorry to bother you during this difficult time. I just wanted to check on you and Jenny, I said as she answered the door. Thank you for coming. Jenny's in her room, but she's not feeling too good since her dad passed, she replied, leading me to the living room. Despite her usual neatness, the house felt somber today. I don't see any of my brother's stuff here, and even a family photo that was here last time. There was no sign that my brother had ever been there. Determined to find something of his, I looked around the room. Maggie brought me some tea and homemade pickles. What caught my eye was a light purple bracelet similar to a rosary on Maggie's wrist. It didn't seem like something she or my brother would wear, and it made me uneasy as I thanked her for the tea and tasted the pickles. These pickles are really salty, aren't they? I remarked, quickly drinking my tea to wash down the extreme saltiness. But Maggie just tilted her head, saying, Really? I don't think so. Maggie, a dietitian, usually made delicious and healthy meals that my brother loved. It was odd for her to make something so salty, especially knowing my brother's high blood pressure. Since I arrived, I've been feeling uneasy at Maggie's house, and I started worrying about Jenny. I'd like to talk to Jenny. She's in her room, right? Just as I stood up to go to her room. No, you can't see her. What? Why? I'm sorry, but you need to leave. I'm busy getting ready for the funeral, Maggie said firmly, grabbing my wrist and pushing me out into the hallway, then out of the house. Feeling frustrated after finding no clues, I looked up at the sky, wondering what to do next. Suddenly, Jenny appeared at a second-floor window. She gestured for me to be quiet and threw something at me. It was a small key wrapped in cute memo paper, the shed key. Hide it under the potted plant after you use it, the note read. I gave Jenny a thumbs up, and she nodded before gently closing the window. To avoid my sister-in-law, I went to the backyard and used the key to open the shed. Inside, I found my brother's belongings, including a diary. Jake had been diligent about recording his daily life in a diary since he lived at home. As I read through it, I couldn't believe what I found. The food had become too salty, and even when he mentioned it, Maggie dismissed it, saying, Trust me, I'm a dietitian, and he couldn't get her to take it seriously. His health had been declining because of it. Plus, he explained why he left that photo. The next day, a crowd gathered at the funeral, including relatives and Jake's colleagues. When Maggie took the microphone to speak, I stood up and interrupted her. I need to say something, I announced. Alice, what's going on? Maggie looked surprised as I walked to the front of the room, ignoring her. Jake didn't die by accident. My words caused a commotion in the hall, and Maggie's expression turned stern. What are you saying? My husband slipped and fell off the scaffold at work, Maggie protested. I showed everyone Jake's diary. It's all written here. My sister-in-law, who is usually a good cook, started making heavily seasoned dishes, and Jake's health started to decline. Isn't it strange, Maggie? Serving salty food to Jake, who has high blood pressure, and insisting he eats it all. I don't know what you're talking about. I always took care with his meals, Maggie insisted, trying to play innocent. Ignoring her, I presented another piece of evidence. This is a photo Jake left for me. At first, I didn't understand its significance, but when I visited your house yesterday, it became clear. The person in this photo is wearing a bracelet that matches the light purple one you're wearing. As I pointed to the person, everyone's attention shifted there. Mr. Johnson, you and Maggie were having an affair, weren't you? Even though you were a colleague Jake trusted, why betray him like this? As murmurs filled the hall, Maggie glared at me while the man looked pale and nervous. Mr. Johnson was a familiar face to me as well. He had been a good friend of Jake's since they graduated from high school and started working together. He had visited our house many times, and I had seen him wearing the same bracelet as Maggie's when he wiped sweat from his forehead. I'm sure Jake was struggling a lot, knowing that the colleague he trusted was having an affair with his wife, and that he might even be in danger. That's why he couldn't tell me directly, and leaving this photo was his way of trying to communicate, I said to Mr. Johnson, holding back tears. He broke down crying and held his head in his hands. What? A diary and a bracelet can't prove an affair or that I killed my husband, Maggie protested, getting defensive. But I was prepared and continued with the evidence from the diary. There's more. Jake checked your phone, Maggie, and found emails between you and Mr. Johnson. It seems you wrote, Jake is in the way of us being together. We need to get rid of him. That's not true. Whether it's a lie or not, we can easily find out by investigating, right? I challenge. At first, it seemed like you were planning to take advantage of my brother's high blood pressure to harm him through his meals. But that would take too long. So driven by your desire to get married as soon as possible, you approached Mr. Johnson to eliminate my brother in a workplace accident, didn't you? You planned to push him from a height on a rainy day, and if anyone asked, you'd just say he slipped. I never suggested such a thing. He's the one who brought it up. Maggie tried to deflect blame onto Mr. Johnson, pointing at him. He shook his head vigorously, denying it. Mr. Johnson, it was raining on the day my brother died, wasn't it? I asked. He nodded slightly. Usually work would be stopped on a rainy day, so why wasn't it? It was only drizzling and we had a deadline, so he suggested we continue with the work. I saw it as an opportunity, Mr. Johnson explained. My brother considered you his best friend and trusted you until the end. You know that, I said, addressing Mr. Johnson. There was a collective intake of breath as he bowed deeply towards Jenny, my brother's only daughter. I was led astray by her, and I did something terrible. I'm truly sorry, Mr. Johnson continued to apologize through tears. Jenny looked at him with sadness in her eyes. Meanwhile, Maggie kept denying any involvement. Even at this point, you'll hand over the incriminating emails to the police, right? I asked, and when Mr. Johnson offered his phone, Maggie seemed to finally give up. Then, a police officer friend who had attended my brother's funeral arrested the two of them and took them away. It was a relief to see them finally caught. Afterward, Maggie and Mr. Johnson received long prison sentences. Thanks to the lawyer I hired, Jenny received financial support from a program called the Victims' Compensation Program, designed to help families of victims recover. Jenny was deeply affected by the incident and struggled for a while, but I adopted her as my own, and she's slowly starting to smile again. I've decided to give her all the love I can in place of my brother.
I'm Lisa, and stepping into that party was the last place I thought my world would turn. There I stood beside Rachel, anticipating some laughter and free drinks. It all changed with a glance from James, his easy smile and hands casually tucked into his jeans. Who's that? I nudged Rachel, eyeing him. That's James, she half shouted over the music. Went to college with him. Real chill guy. You want to meet him? Sure, I shrugged. New faces meant new stories, but I wasn't prepared for the instant connection. James had a way of talking as if I were the only person in the room, and those green eyes didn't hurt either. So, you like the Rolling Stones? He caught me eyeing his t-shirt. Vintage band tees were everywhere, but I meant it when I said only someone who really digs good music would wear Mick Jagger on their chest. He laughed. Are you calling me out or complimenting me? Guess you'll never know, I teased back. By the end of the night, we were inseparable, discussing everything from our love for old-school rock to names for our future pets. James got my number and didn't wait 3 days to call. The next morning, we were deep in the what of tomorrow, talking about rings and forever. But forever comes with its own baggage. Meeting the parents was on the horizon, and the icy reception at the dinner table was unexpected. Margaret, James's mom, broke the so-called ice with a sharp question about my job at the hospital. It wasn't polite interest, but a harder appraisal. Yeah, the county hospital up north, I replied confidently. How much do they pay for that? Her eyes were sharp, her tone sharper. James shot me a look, but I decided to be upfront. Well, James does more than get by, she said, interrupting. So, about this marriage. It was a punch to the gut. I didn't care about money, but the financial discussion had begun. His dad chimed in, and the tone for our commitment was set, tough, not all sunshine and romance. But it was real, and real was something I could work with. Our wedding was simple, fitting in a matchbox. No fanfare, just him, me, and a couple of signatures. In the beginning, we were a team, tackling life from our small joint command center, his old house. We set up a system, half on everything, shared chores, and even cooking together. There was comfort in the routine, in knowing what to expect when we got home. But reality is a tough customer. 4 months down the line, the teamwork was taking hits. Excuses rolled in, bad days stringing together like a lousy pearl necklace. What was meant to be equal started to weigh heavy on my side. The shared life felt more like a solo gig. 2 weeks of slugging it out on my own, and I finally snapped. I wasn't one to make a fuss, but living like this was unbearable. I confronted James, who walked in with headphones on, oblivious to the mounting tension. James, I blurted out, unable to hide the annoyance in my tone. What happened to sharing the load? He looked at me, genuinely confused or exceptionally skilled at acting. What are you on about, Lissa? He asked, pulling off his headphones. I spent nearly an hour scraping your dried-up yogurt off the coffee table this morning. It's like living with a toddler, I complained. He just shrugged, a nonchalant gesture as if he didn't have a care in the world. Chill out, will you? It's just a bit of a mess. A bit of mess? I called it quits. I stopped picking up his dirty socks, stopped doing his laundry. It was petty, but I was at my breaking point. Of course, that's when Margaret, his mother, decided to pop in unannounced. The perfect storm. Look at this place, she said, her nose crinkling as if she found a rotten egg. I tried to keep cool, offered her tea, but she was on the warpath. James, this is no way for a man to live, she said sternly, eyes fixed on me. I didn't raise you to be living in a pigsty. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Margaret, it's a two-person job, and I've been doing it solo. I'm not his maid, you're his wife, I retorted. A wife keeps a clean home? She snapped back, missing the irony that I too had a full-time job. I felt my face flush with anger. And what does a husband do, Margaret? I snapped back. He's the breadwinner, she hollered back, missing the irony again that I too contributed financially. Margaret stormed out, slamming the door, leaving me and James in the rubble of our domestic battlefield. James, knocked down a notch at work, came home that day, dumped his keys like they were made of lead. They're cutting back, he said, the words hanging heavy. I'm off the management track. Just like that, he decided he wouldn't help with the bills anymore. Suddenly, it was all on me. I banged pots and pans like they owed me money. Why are you making such a racket? He asked, picking at his beer label. Someone's got to pay for those beers, I snapped, and keep this place looking half decent. The ensuing conversation was like a round in the ring. You expect me to chip in after a day like today? He shot back. Yeah, James, I said, not backing down. Because I had a cakewalk of a day, right? He had no comeback for that. Just took another swig. We had a deal. We share this, remember? I said, standing in front of the blaring TV. A deal doesn't hold when things go south, he said, not even looking at me. I stood in front of the screen. So, what? I'm supposed to just smile and nod and keep the house like some 1950s sitcom mom. I glared at him. You wanted a partnership, here it is. This is life. Deal with it, he said, thick and toxic words hanging in the air. Ignoring the problem wasn't going to make it vanish. We're supposed to be in this together, and that means not ditching out when it gets tough, I argued. I didn't ditch out the job, did I? He muttered, barely audible over the TV noise. I turned off the TV. We'll see how long we last. If this is how it's going to be, I said, and silence filled the room, as thick as the dirt I've been cleaning all day. He looked away. I stormed off to bed that night, no more words, none that mattered anyhow. They were all bitter, spat out with more hurt than real heart, but they stuck with me like thorns in my side. The tension in the house was like walking into a wall of ice. Barely a word was passed between us without a sharp edge. James had taken to eating his meals alone, delivered by Margaret with a thud at our door, the plastic containers hitting the wood like the gavel of a judge passing sentence. "So, what are we having tonight?" I asked poker-faced as James marched past me, Margaret's cooking in hand. "Does it matter?" He barely glanced my way. "It's not like you're eating." It was true. I didn't have the stomach for food, not for what was in those containers. It was more than lasagna or stew. It was a heavy dose of rejection served up by Margaret, seeping into every room of the house. Then Granny B called, cheerful and active. I could almost smell her lavender perfume through the phone. A visit from Granny could turn a place upside down. And that's what I sorely needed, a gust of fresh air. "I'm packing my bags, baby girl," she chuckled. But I heard the steel underneath, a resilience that had gotten her through tougher times than this. "I need to see your life." I broached the subject over dinner, a silent affair with the clinking of cutlery replacing conversation. "Granny B wants to visit," I said, dropping the bomb without preamble. James paused mid-bite, his eyes hardening. "Here, stay with us," I nodded, gripping my fork like a lifeline. He shook his head, speaking with his mouth full, forgetting manners existed. "No chance. Margaret wouldn't like it. Since when do we schedule our life around your mother?" The boldness of my words surprised even me. Margaret's voice sliced through from the doorway. "Since it's our house, girl, you just live here." The unfairness choked me like a noose. "Your son and I are supposed to be building a life together, Margaret." She snorted. "A life? You called us a life. Look at you two. I bring him food because someone needs to take care of my boy." James stood up, his chair scraping back like a scream. "And that's how it's going to be. No visits, no changes. It's settled." I looked between them, the mother and son, feeling the outsider tag slapping against my chest. "It's settled because you say so. What about what I want, what I need?" "You need to understand that things are the way they are." James shot back, red flushing his cheeks. "My house, my rules." The ache spread from my heart to my fingertips, but I squared my shoulders. "It's also my home, James, or at least it's supposed to be." He had no answer, just the hard line of his jaw, telling me the conversation was over. But nothing was settled. Granny B would come, somehow. I'd make sure of it. For the first time, I wanted the battleground. If they wouldn't budge, neither would I. There was fight in me yet, and the freeze in the house would need my fire to thaw it, whether they liked it or not. For the third month in a row, James did not contribute his share to our family budget. I was carrying everything, the house, the groceries, and even his damn beer. We had a fight, the last straw. James and I stood facing each other, our words sharp enough to slice through steel. The room felt smaller as the tension grew, air thick with resentment saved up from months of silent battles and unspoken words. "I don't want you as my wife," James said, his voice dripping with finality, signaling the end of everything. It didn't come out as a shout. That might have been better. A shout I could have responded to with fury. Instead, it was a low hiss, a deflating tire's last breath, leaving behind silence that echoed louder than any scream. "I don't want to be where I'm not wanted," I countered with as much steadiness as I could muster, despite the tremor within. He didn't stop me as I started to pack my bags. Each piece of clothing folded felt like a piece of the life we'd built being tucked away, rendered insignificant. I headed to the door, my suitcase a loyal companion trailing behind me. James was still standing in the center of the chaos, the eye of the storm that had hit us over and over until we'd broken into scattered pieces beyond collection. He didn't move, didn't try to stop me. The door closed with a click, much too gentle for the ending it represented. Outside, Granny B was in her old dependable car that smelled of leather and peppermint. Leaning over to open the passenger door, I heaved my suitcase into the back and slid in beside her without a word. "All set, dear?" Granny asked, her eyes soft but her voice strong, a rock in a swirling sea. "Yeah, I'm set," I mumbled, buckling the seatbelt over the hollow feeling in my chest. Granny B didn't start the car right away. "Heck of a fool," she said flatly, adding an expletive that would have made a sailor blush. I choked out a strange chuckle. "Well, it's true." She finally turned the key in the ignition, the engine rumbling to life reassuringly. "You're worth 10 of him, 15 even." She backed out, and we started towards the new apartment. I didn't reply. Instead, I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, watching the landscape blur the same way my thoughts were a jumble of memories and pain. Granny B didn't push with questions or platitudes. She just drove, every now and then muttering something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like curses aimed at James. The cozy rented apartment was in a normal neighborhood, a place where you could blend in and lick your wounds in peace. As Granny hauled my bag out of the car with surprising strength, I unlocked the door to the unknown. "Well," Granny said, clapping her hands together, "time to rebuild, kiddo. You've got a life to claim, and that sorry excuse for a man to forget." I nodded, feeling the very first flutter of something like hope in my chest. Breaking points, I realized, weren't just about endings. They were about beginnings too. Messy, painful, but real. First starts didn't erase the past, but they gave you a canvas to create something new, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what I needed. Granny B was sitting on my threadbare couch, her hands clasped over her knee, bouncing with what seemed like contained energy. Who knew that beneath that floral dress and the wrinkles was a woman with the heart of a Wall Street hustler? "So, you're telling me all the dough I sent you for your meds and stuff, you've been playing the market with it?" I stared at her in disbelief. Granny B chuckled and winked. "Honey, you think I'd let your hard-earned cash rot under a mattress? No way. I've been growing it bit by bit." It felt unreal. I crunched the divorce papers in my hand, knowing that what Granny B had just told me was going to flip the script in a major way. James and Margaret, the perfect couple from next door, agreed to meet us one last time, probably thinking they could offer me some friendly advice on starting over. Margaret opened the door with all fake smiles. "Well, if it isn't the soon-to-be single lady, come in. We were just talking about you." James sat at the dining table, smirking without a care in the world. "Good of you to come by. We need to talk about the neighborhood now that you'll probably be moving somewhere more, affordable." I clenched my jaw, but remembered Granny's news. "I needed this, actually, James. I won't be going anywhere," Granny B piped up. "She's got a juicy bit of news. Tell 'em, hun." I enjoyed the suspense, stretching their faces tight. "Turns out, I got a little nest egg waiting for me. Granny's been smart with the money." James laughed harsh and loud. "What, did you win the lottery or something, Granny B?" Granny grinned, sharp as a tack. "Better." I turned her spare change into a cool 2 million. The smiles fell off James and Margaret's faces like overripe fruit. 2 million, Margaret's voice came out strangled. "Yep, and I don't plan to spend it on this neighborhood." My words felt heavy as I watched their painted-on warmth crumble. Granny slapped a hand on her thigh, triumphant. "Ain't that something? Just when you think life's kicked you, it decides to kiss you instead." James started babbling something about how half of this money belongs to him. I burst out laughing, reminding him of the prenuptial agreement I had signed. At this moment, his mother would probably like to go back 6 months to destroy this paper. James and Margaret sat in silence, looking at us with puppy dog eyes. I couldn't help but relish the irony. We didn't linger much longer. There was nothing left to say. As we walked out, Granny B draped an arm around my shoulders. "So what's first on the millionaire to-do list?" she asked, squeezing me tight. "First, I'm getting an ice cream, a big one with all the fixings," I said, the future suddenly bright and wide open. Granny let out a hearty laugh. the sound mingling with the promise of an unseen fortune, now seen and closer than ever. The phone rang again. I was pretty sure it was James trying his luck once more, but this time it went straight to voicemail. I had stuff to sort out and no desire to entertain that mess. I heaved a sigh, looking around my cramped apartment cluttered with memories, too many of them pinned to James and a shadow that loomed like a bad smell. Grandma, with her sharp eyes and a non-nonsense attitude, was right as rain. "Why do you even keep that thing on?" Grandma gestured at the phone with a scoff, busy shuffling through a pile of real estate listings. I shrugged and tossed the phone on the couch. "Guess I'm too soft, squishy as an overripe tomato," she snorted. "We need to get moving. I don't want James or his mama knocking on our door trying to weasel back into our lives when we've barely shucked him off." "I know, Grams." "Thanks." I flashed her a grateful look. "So, where to?" She slapped a listing onto the kitchen table. It was circled and bold. "Here, 2 bedrooms, cleaner air, away from unwanted pests." I skimmed the details. "Looks decent, Grams. Any pizza joints nearby?" The next day dawned fresh. We were off, the apartment ad in hand, and a skipping grandma step. The listing agent met us at the property, all smiles and slicked back hair reeking of too much aftershave. "Welcome, ladies," he extended his hand right at Grandma. She eyed it like it was a dead fish, but shook it all the same. Cut to the chase, hot shot. "We're not here for pleasantries." I bit back a laugh as the agent's smile twitched. Of course. He quickly unlocked the door. "This way, please." The place was a gem compared to where we were. Good light, clean floors, and the air didn't hold any of James's cologne. Grandma handled it like she was born in a market stall. The price dropped, terms changed. By the time we walked out, the agent looked 2 inches shorter. The move went smooth. Neighbors were quick to say hi, a couple of them inviting us over for beers and a barbecue. They asked about my story, but I kept it simple. I was done letting my past hitch a ride. The new place shaped up nice. I continued to work as a nurse, and Grandma found her corner for knitting and gossiping with Mrs. Ham from next door, who had more sass packed in her tiny frame than anyone I'd ever met. One evening, I grabbed a pizza from the new joint, of course, and headed home. As I flipped open the box, the steam carried that cheesy aroma up, and I couldn't help but smile. So we settled in, me and Grandma, our little team. The taste of fresh starts and thick crust pizza in the air, laughter from the neighbor's yard spilling in through our open window, and a sense of peace finally making itself at home. James and his empty promises faded into the background noise, just like the buzz of the city we'd left behind. I was looking forward, and the view was pretty damn good.
"Hi, Eric. Mommy, you're home." "Yay, where's Daddy?" Eric felt uneasy when he heard this question. He looked down and said, I'm not sure." "What's wrong, sweetie? Are you keeping secrets with Mommy?" Eric didn't say anything but continued to look down at the floor nervously. I could tell something wasn't right. I called my husband, David. "Where are you?" "I came for a vacation with our son." I ended the call and we quickly packed our bags and left the house. "Hi, my name is Caroline and I'm 40 years old. I'm married to David, who's 42 years old. We've been married for the last 10 years. David and I used to work at the same office, which is how we met. We fell in love and got married. We were a happy couple. 2 years after David and I got married, our son Eric was born, and our family felt complete. Eric is now 8 years old. Soon after we got married, David found a better job opportunity at a different company and decided to switch. I continued working at the same company, and over time, I got promoted to a senior position. This new role required me to travel for a few days each month for business trips. When Eric was 3 years old, I was offered another promotion at work. However, it came with a condition. I would need to travel for business reasons a few days each month. I hesitated to accept because Eric was still very young, and I didn't want to leave him alone. But David reassured me. "Don't worry, honey. I'll take care of Eric." "Are you sure? Eric is still so little." "Absolutely, he's my son too. And it's just for a few days." "Okay then, I'll take the promotion." David always supported my work. He would take care of Eric when I had to go on these trips. I was really thankful to David for being so caring and supportive. Everything was going well until one day my father-in-law called. "Hey David, I've been thinking about stepping down from the business. I'm getting older and can't handle the stress anymore. Is everything okay, Dad?" "Yeah, everything's fine. I'm just realizing I'm getting older, you know. It's time for you to take over the business." "David, this isn't unexpected. I've let you have your way with everything until now, but this is something you need to do for the family." "Dad, you can't make me do this." "I'm not making you do anything. Just consider it. How long will you keep working a regular job? The business will give you flexibility later in life." "But Dad, you're my only heir. If you don't want to take over the company, I'll have to sell it because I can't handle it anymore." I didn't intend for it to sound like that. "Alright then, how about you start by working here for a month and see how it goes?" "But Dad, you've been running the business so smoothly for years. I'm worried I won't be able to manage it as well as you." "You'll learn as you go along." I didn't know anything about business until I started doing it myself. "Okay Dad, I'll give my notice at work and wrap things up there." Even though David enjoyed his job, he knew he would have to take over the family business eventually. He was prepared for it, but he didn't expect it to happen so soon. After David joined the family business, I started noticing changes in his behavior. He would come home late, spend evenings on his phone by himself, and often be away on weekends. This went on for a few months. Eventually, I couldn't ignore it anymore and decided to talk to him about it. "David, is everything okay with you?" "Yeah, what's up?" "I've noticed a change in your behavior over the past few months." "What change?" "I don't understand what you're talking about." I wanted to address the issue so we could work on it together, but David seemed to brush off any problems. I became frustrated with his dismissive attitude. "Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. You come home late almost every day. And when you do come home early, instead of spending time with me or Eric, you're glued to your phone." David responded firmly, "I'm busy. It's not like when I worked for a company and could finish at 7 p.m. This is my business now. I have to give it attention even after I get home. I need to coordinate with other departments over the phone." "What about the weekends?" "Yes, sometimes we have to work on weekends too." Feeling overwhelmed, I left the room to calm down. While David's reasons made sense, I couldn't shake off my concerns. I could sense a growing distance between us, though I couldn't quite explain it to David. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and allow him time to adjust to the business. Besides, he was a loving father to Eric and took good care of him when I was away. He even made sure to take Eric on small vacations during my business trips. As time passed, David became even busier with the business. Sometimes he wouldn't come home at all. Despite living under the same roof, we hardly communicated. I started wondering if my work was causing this distance between us. I often felt lonely, with no one to confide in. My parents were elderly, and I didn't want to burden them with my problems. I had lost touch with most of my friends as I became preoccupied with family and work. David's presence in my life seemed minimal. My only solace was Eric. Although he was too young to understand my troubles, spending time with him brought me joy and relief. However, I began to notice changes in Eric. His grades were dropping, and he was spending excessive time playing video games. David spoiled him with expensive video games and toys, which only seemed to worsen the situation. The next time David brought home expensive video games for Eric, I couldn't help but feel concerned. "I disagree, David. Eric already has plenty of video games and toys. Adding another one isn't necessary." "What do you mean? Can't I give gifts to my own son anymore? What's the problem?" "Eric's grades have been slipping, and he's constantly distracted by video games. It's not good for his development. He's my son. He'll figure it out on his own. You don't need to interfere. He's my son too, David. I want to make sure he's raised to be educated and responsible." "Are you implying that I'm irresponsible? I've been looking after Eric since he was 3 years old while you were away on your business trips." I was taken aback by his accusation. He had willingly taken on the responsibility of caring for Eric, And as his father, it was his duty too. But it was you who encouraged me to take the promotion and said you take care of Eric. Yes, I did. You should appreciate my support instead of constantly criticizing me. I've always appreciated your support for me. That's why I'm still here, despite your distant behavior. His words hit me hard, and I couldn't hold back my tears. Please don't try to paint yourself as the victim here. I lost my temper and yelled at him. I'm done with you. I don't feel any affection or gratitude towards you anymore. Taking care of Eric was your responsibility as a parent. I don't owe you anything for that. David shouted back, "You're so ungrateful. Women like you can never be happy or keep their husbands happy." It was the first time David had spoken to me like this. Even when we weren't getting along, he had never been cruel. But now, he seemed like a different person. His words cut deep, and I couldn't help but cry. I locked myself in the bathroom and sobbed uncontrollably. Eric overheard our argument. When he saw me locked in the bathroom for a long time, he started knocking on the door, crying, "Mommy, please come out." Eventually, I washed my face, unlocked the door, and hugged him. "Mommy, I was scared when you stayed in there for so long." "I'm sorry, honey. I was just taking a long bath. But your hair is still dry." I chuckled and pinched his cheeks. "You're quite clever, aren't you? How about spaghetti for dinner?" Eric's eyes lit up. Yes, spaghetti. His excitement brought a smile to my face, pushing aside my worries. Meanwhile, David remained on the couch, engrossed in his phone. I prepared dinner for Eric and tucked him into bed. With an early flight for my business trip the next morning, I packed my bags and left a note with my travel details on David's desk. Since our relationship had grown distant, I always left a note with my travel plans for David so he could make arrangements for Eric or take him to my in-laws' house the next day. I went on my scheduled trip, but the recent arguments with David weighed heavily on my mind. I couldn't focus on my work. By the second day, I started feeling feverish and weak, so I decided to cut my trip short. I contacted my manager and explained that I was feeling unwell. They arranged for me to return home immediately. When I got back, I was looking forward to spending quality time with my son. However, when I arrived home, I found the front door locked and the lights off. I used my spare key to unlock the door and went inside. The house was dark, so I turned on the lights and headed upstairs to Eric's room. There, I found Eric playing with his video games on his bed. "Hey Eric, sweetheart. What are you doing here? And why are all the lights off in the house?" Excited to see me, Eric ran over. "Mommy, you're back. Yay, where's Daddy?" Eric seemed uneasy when I asked about his dad. He avoided eye contact and mumbled, I don't know. "When did he leave, sweetie?" "I'm not sure, Mommy. Dad told me not to say anything." "What do you mean, honey? What's going on? Why are you keeping secrets from Mommy?" Eric remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor nervously. I could tell something wasn't right. Worried, I called my husband. "David, where are you?" "I came for a vacation with our son." I was shocked and devastated. David had been lying to me, and Eric had heard it all. I hung up the phone, staring at David in disbelief. Eric started crying. After calming him down, Eric confessed everything to me. It was heart-wrenching to hear. "Mommy, whenever you went on a trip, Daddy left me alone in the house." "What?" He continued sobbing as I held him close. "Sweetheart, how long has Daddy been leaving you alone?" "When I was little, Daddy took care of me and never left me alone. But now he locks me inside the house. He leaves food in the fridge for me and gives me video games to play." "And when does your father come back?" "Daddy comes home late at night and leaves again in the morning," Eric replied. I couldn't believe what my son had been going through while I was away. I felt guilty for leaving him in David's care. "Why didn't you tell me, sweetheart?" "At first, Dad would leave me alone for a few hours, but he always brought back lots of chocolates and toys for me. But now, he's gone for the whole day. He made me promise not to tell you anything. I hate seeing him cry like this." "Okay, calm down now. Mommy's here." "I'm sorry, Mommy, for getting the new video games. I kept my promise and didn't tell you anything." "I'm sorry, sweetheart, that you had to go through all of this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What kind of father would do such a thing?" David was rewarding Eric for keeping this terrible secret. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't bear to stay in that house any longer or let my child be around such a man. We packed our bags and left immediately. I hired an investigation agency to look into David's actions. After dropping Eric off at my aunt's house, I went to David's parents and told them everything. My mother-in-law couldn't believe that David could do such things. Caroline, please don't rush into anything. Maybe there's some misunderstanding. It's not wise to make such a big decision based solely on what Eric says. He's just a child. What do you mean? I know you're trying to help, but I can't even think about talking to David right now. How can I trust him after all of this? I was too angry to grasp her suggestion properly, even though she probably meant well. Do you really believe Eric would make up something like this? And why would David lie to me about being on vacation with Eric? Well, maybe he was just caught up with work. I lost my patience and decided to lay everything out. This incident isn't isolated. Your son has been distant since he joined the family business. He comes home late, hardly spends time with Eric, and often spends his weekends away. Are you suggesting that all of this is because David joined the family business? My father-in-law interrupted. Brianna, let her speak, he said. Caroline is right. I never imagined David would change like this after joining the business. Some of my senior employees mentioned David's growing closeness with his assistant. What? Why did he tell me about this? I brushed it off as workplace gossip. People tend to enjoy spreading rumors like that, my father-in-law explained. I never thought David would do something like this. He loved you and Eric so much. I should have taken it seriously. I regret it now. Please forgive me, Caroline, he pleaded. I sat there in shock, unable to say anything. Brianna looked equally stunned. They both seemed devastated. David had always been seen as the perfect son, husband, and father. He had let everyone down. I couldn't blame my father-in-law because I, too, had never suspected David of having an affair, despite our relationship growing colder. I attributed it to our busy schedules. I had foolishly hoped that once Eric grew up and we were free from parental duties, we'd be happy together again in our retirement. But now, everything felt shattered. After leaving my in-laws' house, I started receiving calls from David. I assumed my in-laws had spoken to him. I ignored his calls and blocked his number. I stayed with my aunt for a few days while searching for a new place to live. Eventually, the investigation agency sent their reports, confirming my suspicions. David had indeed been having an affair with his assistant, Lily. He would skip work and spend the day at her place whenever I was away. I hired a lawyer and sent divorce papers along with the evidence I received from the agency. It turned out that Lily was a single mother to a 5-year-old girl. She had been divorced by her ex-husband due to an extramarital affair during her pregnancy. When she applied for her job, she portrayed herself as a victim, claiming she divorced her husband because he cheated on her while she was pregnant. Despite her lack of qualifications, my father-in-law had given her a job out of sympathy. She deceived everyone in the office with her false story. It seemed she had also used the same tale on David. However, the investigation revealed her true nature. Further digging uncovered details about her ex-husband. He had divorced Lily without providing any alimony or child support, alleging that the baby was not his. A DNA test confirmed his claim. I forwarded all these details to David through my lawyer. According to my lawyer, David was devastated by the evidence and ended things with Lily. He accused her of breaking into our house. David wasn't ready to let go of our marriage. He loved Eric deeply and couldn't bear the thought of losing him. He admitted to my lawyer that he had been influenced by Lily and begged for another chance. He also confessed that it was Lily's idea to leave Eric alone at home, mirroring her own situation with her daughter. If it had only been me hurt by David's actions, I might have considered giving him another chance. But now it was a matter of my child's safety and upbringing. I couldn't raise Eric with a father who would bribe him into lying. After enduring so much pain, I was determined to get a divorce. It wasn't just a matter of days or months. David had betrayed my trust for years, yet I had never doubted his loyalty. I couldn't forgive him for breaking that trust. I refused any settlement other than divorce. My father-in-law apologized for David's actions and supported me throughout this ordeal. The news of David's affair and our divorce spread like wildfire throughout the office, leading to gossip and speculation. Unable to bear the shame, my father-in-law removed David and Lily from the company. He took charge again for a few years before selling the company to another businessman for a substantial sum. David's name was removed from his parents' will, and instead, Eric inherited his grandfather's legacy. David was disowned by his parents as he had shattered their trust too. David relocated to another part of the city where he faced judgment from the community for his infidelity with his assistant. Meanwhile, I transferred to a different department where I didn't have to travel as much. This allowed me to balance my work and home life more effectively. I hired a full-time nanny to care for Eric, ensuring he received the attention and care he deserved. I'm considering leaving my job in a few years. I've saved enough for my retirement and want to enjoy life to the fullest with my son. My greatest wish is for Eric to grow up into an educated and responsible individual, and I'll do everything in my power to ensure he receives the best upbringing possible.
Emily sneered at me after I announced my resignation, and I responded by maintaining a silent, steady gaze. Our conversation had revolved around the company's decision to cut labor costs, with particular disdain aimed at those supposedly exploiting overtime pay. Tom, too, seemed to relish the notion of trimming expenses. A week later, my phone incessantly rang with calls from the company. Upon answering, the president inquired sharply, "Who exactly are you?" I couldn't help but scoff mockingly at the president's question. In response, I introduced myself as Lily Johnson, a 59-year-old employee with 37 years of dedicated service since my college graduation. I explained our company's role in providing administrative services, particularly catering to busy company presidents handling clerical work. Specializing in tax-related matters, I proudly managed 45 clients, a responsibility that had grown overwhelming despite the assistance of a part-timer. Despite the challenges, I couldn't show any sign of weakness. Our clients were long-standing relationships, and their adversities fueled my determination. Today, as I sat in front of my computer, the relentless harassment from Tom and Emily weighed heavily on my mind. Tom, 7 years my junior and now the head of the tax department, had drastically changed his demeanor 3 months ago upon promotion. His once polite tone was replaced with condescension and complaints, making every interaction a struggle. Even when I countered, he remained unfazed, instructing me to consult the manual for guidance and warning against unnecessary actions. Emily, Tom's assistant, joined in the harassment, criticizing my efficiency and mocking my rank and file status. Despite being the first to decline a promotion to department head, a fact unknown to Tom and Emily, I committed to completing my regular duties. Their harassment persisted, with Tom accusing me of increasing overtime, branding it a waste. Emily echoed his sentiment, sighing as she claimed my constant overtime was dragging down the entire tax department's performance. The recent cause of my overtime was Tom unexpectedly leaving a month's worth of client files on my desk to be filed by the end of the month after work. My face drained of color as I glanced at the files before me. "Wait, these all have deadlines this month, right?" I uttered in confusion. However, before I could grasp the gravity of the situation, Tom was already packing up his desk, completely uninterested in addressing my concerns. "I'm heading out. Take care with that," he casually remarked as he swiftly left the office, leaving me with a pile of urgent tasks. Emily followed suit, adding insult to injury with a mocking laugh. The incredulity of the situation weighed on me, and I sighed heavily as I opened the client files scattered on my desk. To my dismay, some of the files were originally Emily's responsibility. The realization deepened my sigh. I understood why Tom had been subjecting me to relentless harassment. They wanted me to retire quickly. My extensive experience and deeper knowledge in taxation made me a preferred resource for other members of the tax department over Tom. Tom's unapproachable demeanor and unattractive appearance made everyone, except Emily, avoid him. It seemed Emily's proximity to him was strategic, driven by Tom's preference for younger female employees. The shallow nature of their thinking sent a chill down my spine. Emily's harassment was not just a personal vendetta. She aimed to curry favor with Tom, the one evaluating the tax department's performance. Despite these challenges, I had to manage the declarations. alongside preparing tax declarations for my assigned companies. It seemed today's workload was far from over. However, claiming overtime would only invite complaints from Tom and Emily, leaving me resigned to the prospect of unpaid extra hours. Then, unexpectedly, I received a summons to the president's office. Our company had recently undergone a change in leadership due to the former president's sudden illness. The new president, the former president's son, wasn't fully acquainted with our company. As I entered the office, I noticed Tom and Emily with unpleasant smirks on their faces. In a tense atmosphere, the president dropped a bombshell. "Lily, we'll need you to resign by the end of this month." My mind spun as I asked for clarification. Tom and Emily had apparently accused me of overbilling for overtime, citing that while others had around 15 hours, I had exceeded 80 hours. The president, oblivious to the true circumstances, seemed impressed with Tom and Emily's zero overtime. The reality of the situation hit me. The inflated overtime was a result of doing Tom and Emily's work. However, revealing Tom's instructions would risk portraying it as my own inability to manage time effectively. I presented the facts, asserting that I hadn't overbilled for overtime but struggled to finish my workload within regular hours. The president sighed deeply, expressing doubt but acknowledging the lack of evidence to pursue the matter further. Nevertheless, he insisted that they couldn't retain someone working at such a slow pace. Resigned to the situation, the president suggested my resignation, and it seemed his mind was made up. Told to leave the company I had devoted 37 years to, I felt a weariness settle in. Despite my dedication, the additional workload from Tom and Emily went unappreciated. I agreed to resign at the end of the month, acknowledging that I had already communicated my decision to the president. As I glanced at Tom and Emily, their vulgar smiles reflected satisfaction. Leaving the president's office, Emily taunted me with a sarcastic, "Thanks for quitting," her sneer cutting through. I responded with a silent stare, facing similar disdain from Tom, who shared his approval of cutting labor costs and labeled me as someone exploiting overtime pay. Observing their cheerful conversation, I pondered the handover process. Creating documents for all my clients, I ensured proper farewells and appointments with those I could meet personally. Unable to schedule a meeting with the president, I resorted to letters to inform them of my successor. A week post-resignation, enjoying a moment of relaxation at home, my mobile phone rang. Seeing the company's call, I hesitated, having already completed social insurance procedures. However, persistent calls from both the company and Tom and Emily's personal mobiles led me to answer reluctantly. As I picked up, the president urgently spoke, asking, "Who exactly are you?" I couldn't help but mockingly reply, "Just an unemployed lady who resigned from the company, nothing else." In response, the president urgently explained the chaos since my departure, 49 calls to stop transactions with the company. He pleaded for my immediate return, revealing a sense of panic in his tone. Reluctantly, I rose from my seat and made my way back to the company. Upon my arrival, I found Tom and Emily waiting, their faces notably pallid and dark circles underlining their weary eyes. Surprised by their drastic change in appearance, I inquired about what was happening. Tom glared at me and revealed, "Since you left, we've been bombarded with calls to stop transactions, not just from your clients but also from prospective companies we were planning to introduce." "What did you do?" Emily echoed the suspicion, expressing disillusionment at the thought of me resorting to underhanded tactics. Their haggard appearance suggested the toll handling cancellations. While I had not manipulated the clients, I had a hunch about the reason behind the transaction halts. Considering the inevitability of cancellations, I mumbled my thoughts aloud. Tom, however, accused me outright, insisting I had orchestrated something. He demanded I go to the president's office immediately, forcefully escorting me there. Upon entering the president's office with Tom and Emily, the president greeted me with a direct look in his eyes. Tom declared, "President, I brought her," with an air of authority, while Emily hurriedly followed suit. Ignoring their accusatory tone, the president questioned me about the abrupt halt in transactions after my departure. I took a deep breath and explained, Our clients don't need us to manage their taxes. There are tax accounting firms that offer cheaper services. They continued with us because of me. Tom snapped back, questioning my self-worth, and Emily taunted me, both challenging my value to the company. Undeterred, I elaborated on my unique approach, offering tailored tax-saving strategies that resonated with our clients. Tom dismissed it as inefficient, arguing that their manual-based operations were more practical. The president sighed deeply, recognizing the fundamental difference in our approaches. In a serious tone, he said, actually, signaling a crucial revelation or decision to follow. I received a surprising call from my father, the former president. It turns out that some clients, who had stopped transactions, went directly to Dad to negotiate on my behalf. I hadn't anticipated clients going to such lengths for me. Dad emphasized that the tax department thrived because of my contributions. Not only did I manage my clients efficiently, but I also supported my colleagues' clients, possessing knowledge that even Tom couldn't match. Dad disclosed that if I hadn't declined the promotion, I would have held a higher position than a department head by now. The current president expressed regret with a pained expression. Emily appeared shocked, probably grappling with the idea that I could have been her superior. The president apologized for making me resign initially and asked if I would consider revoking my resignation. According to Dad, I was indispensable to the company. While I appreciated the change in the president's perspective, I hesitated to accept. Tom interrupted our conversation, visibly upset, and protested the president's decision, questioning why I was chosen over him. Emily echoed his sentiments, praising Tom's leadership and expressing disbelief at the preference for me. The president then sternly addressed them, revealing that since my resignation, numerous complaints had been received from the tax department, suggesting they had been shifting their workload onto others. Tom's face turned pale as the president exposed the fact that he had been pushing the preparation of client declaration forms onto subordinates, including Emily's work for multiple clients. The president pointed out the irony, considering Tom had accused me of being a salary thief. Observing Tom and Emily's pale expressions, the president continued by revealing an alleged leak about their romantic involvement. Tom struggled to defend himself, claiming he was merely mentoring Emily as her superior. However, the president produced receipts from the accounting department, indicating dining expenses filed by Tom. Confronted with evidence, Tom, sweating profusely, was unable to provide a convincing explanation. Emily, too, turned ghostly pale as the president accused them of neglecting their duties, inflating expense claims, and violating company policy by having an affair in the office while being married. In a calm and straightforward manner, the president declared the termination of their employment effective immediately. Tom and Emily tried to resist, promising to retract the receipt claims and pleading for their jobs. "I have a family," Tom desperately pleaded, attempting to reverse his termination. Emily echoed his sentiments, tearfully expressing her fear of being fired. She promised to apologize to me and others for burdening them with work, realizing the gravity of the situation involving neglect of duties and an affair with a supervisor. Concerned about her reputation, she implored for a second chance. Sensing their desperation, I offered advice. "Why don't you stop resisting? It's undignified," I suggested. Tom glared at me, retorting, "Shut up. What would a single person like you understand?" I sighed, reminding him, "Tom, you were the one who got me fired. It's just karma. What goes around comes around. Why don't you take some responsibility and reflect a bit?" Frustrated, Tom looked away, while Emily bit her lip in distress. Aware of more details about their misconduct, I turned to the president, asking with a smile if I should share them. Tom and Emily frantically tried to stop me, fearing further exposure. I issued an ultimatum, warning them that wrongdoings would eventually come to light, urging them to face reality before it worsened. At my words, both Tom and Emily collapsed to their knees, and the president decided to fire them on the spot. Later, I revealed more about their misdeeds, including Tom faking business trips to spend days with Emily and their insidious tactics of harassing disliked employees into quitting. Despite my attempts to help those employees, Tom and Emily's strategies were relentless. They repeatedly reprimanded and pressured employees out of my sight, often assigning sudden tasks with tight deadlines. The resigned employees had initially asked me to keep quiet, but since they were now happily working elsewhere, I decided it was time to speak up. The president, furious at my revelations, expressed anger about cutting Tom and Emily's final salary. He planned to thoroughly investigate past inflated expense claims. Tom, with tears in his eyes, begged the president not to cut his salary, fearing the impact on his family. As the truth unraveled, Tom's affair with Emily came to light, leading to Tom's divorce. The two now face claims for compensation in the divorce lawsuit, marking the consequential aftermath of their actions. I became aware of the situation when Tom reached out to me, seeking assistance in persuading the president to reconsider their firing. Emily and Tom found themselves in dire straits. Despite their efforts, they struggled to secure new jobs in the tax industry. The industry's close-knit nature meant that word of their misdeeds spread rapidly, making potential employers hesitant to hire them. Desperate for income to cover divorce compensation and living expenses, they resorted to day labor at construction sites, a stark departure from their previous office roles. Emily would often call me in tears, pleading for help. "Lily, please help. I only wanted a better life, and I never truly liked Tom," she'd cry. However, I couldn't ignore the fact that their predicament was a consequence of their own actions. Many, including myself, had been impacted by their behavior. I reminded Emily that the consequences were a result of her choices. "You can't unring a bell," I told her firmly. Facing hardships was the consequence of her decisions. Emily's despair echoed through her protests. Despite her regrets, the outcome remained unchanged. As for me, I chose to distance myself from the chaos of the corporate world. Despite the president's pleas for my return, I declined. Once told to resign, I had no desire to return. Instead, I found solace in assisting at a friend's tax office, supplementing my income and enjoying a more relaxed lifestyle. In the future, I entertained the idea of starting my own office, where I could serve my clients without the constraints of corporate bureaucracy. In my own space, I could fully dedicate myself to my clients' needs. As a tax accountant, I aspired to be on equal footing with my clients, providing service without superiority. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one filled with excitement and opportunities to pursue what truly mattered to me. My second life had just begun, and I eagerly anticipated the journey ahead.
The tile floor is cold against my cheek and somewhere above me. Jake sighs with the kind of irritation usually reserved for delayed flights or burnt toast. Not, I think bitterly, for his pregnant wife sprawled across our kitchen floor. I'm Nova, and this isn't how I pictured sharing my pregnancy news with my husband. "You really need to stop being so dramatic," Jake says, his voice floating down from what seems like miles away. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes. The room spins as I try to push myself up. My fingers slip against the smooth tiles, and the morning sickness hits again, harder this time. I barely make it to my knees before retching into the sink. Jesus Christ, Nova. Jake's footsteps retreat. "I'll be late. Don't leave," I manage between heaves. "Please, I need to tell you something." The footsteps pause. I hear him adjusting his tie, that expensive silk one his mother gave him last Christmas. Can it wait? I have the Thompson project presentation today. I grip the counter, pulling myself upright. The world tilts dangerously, but I force myself to turn and face him. I'm pregnant. Jake's face goes blank, like someone hit pause on a video. His hand freezes mid-tie adjustment. What? 8 weeks, I say. I found out yesterday. He blinks rapidly, his jaw working. Are you sure? 3 tests and a doctor's appointment, sure. Jake's eyes dart around the kitchen, landing anywhere but on me. He checks his watch. Look, we'll talk about this tonight. I really can't be late for this meeting. Tonight? My voice cracks. Jake, I just told you we're having a baby. And that's big news. He grabs his briefcase from the counter. But Maya's been working on this presentation for weeks, and if I'm not there to support her... Maya, something cold settles in my stomach, heavier than morning sickness. Your new coworker, Maya? Project partner, he corrects automatically. Listen, we'll figure this out later, okay? Take some ginger ale or something. Before I can respond, he's gone. The front door closes with a decisive click that echoes through our suddenly too large house. I slide back down to the floor, pressing my forehead against the cabinet door. My phone buzzes. A text from Helen, Jake's mother. Lunch today? We need to discuss the country club membership. I close my eyes, remembering how she cornered me at last week's family dinner. When are you two finally giving me grandchildren? She demanded. Jake's not getting any younger. My hand drifts to my still flat stomach. Neither am I'd replied, forcing a smile while Jake pretended to be fascinated by his phone. The irony would be funny if I wasn't sitting here alone, trying not to throw up again. I text Helen back, can't today. Not feeling well. Her response is immediate. You're always not feeling well lately. Jake works so hard. He deserves a wife who can keep up with social obligations. Something snaps inside me. Maybe it's the hormones, or maybe it's the way Jake looked right through me as he rushed to support Maya. Or maybe it's just that I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when it's so clearly not. I grab my phone and pull up Jake's calendar, the one he thinks I don't know how to access. There it is. Thompson Project Meeting, 9:30 a.m. But there's another entry, hidden in his personal calendar. Lunch, 1 p.m. My hands shake as I screenshot the entry. The nausea returns, but this time it has nothing to do with morning sickness. You're right, Helen, I text back. Jake does work very hard, especially with his new project partner, Maya. Maybe we should all have lunch together sometime? I hit send before I can change my mind, then block her number. Standing up slowly, I steady myself against the counter and look around our pristine kitchen. With its matching appliances and coordinated color scheme, everything perfectly in place, just like Jake likes it. Well, almost everything. 3 weeks have passed, and Jake's chair sits empty at dinner again. His excuses pile up like the takeout containers in our trash, late meetings, client emergencies, networking events. Tonight it's drinks with potential investors, though his calendar still shows that mysterious M entry. I push my untouched pasta around the plate, fighting another wave of nausea. The smell of garlic, once my favorite, now makes my stomach roll. My phone lights up with a text from Helen. Jake tells me you've been difficult about the country club events. This isn't how we do things in this family. The fork clatters against porcelain. I delete the message without responding, but another follows. I'm coming over tomorrow. We need to talk about your priorities. The front door opens just as I'm dumping my dinner in the trash. Jake's cologne hits me first, different from his usual scent, sweeter somehow, more feminine. You're home early, I say, not turning around. Meeting wrapped up faster than expected. His voice is careful, measured. Mother called. She's worried about you. Fascinating. I start loading the dishwasher, each plate a controlled slam. Did she mention I'm carrying her grandchild, or just my apparent failure as a society wife? Jake sighs. Nova, don't start. I'm tired. Tired. I spin around, a water glass clutched too tightly in my hand. You want to talk about tired? Try growing a human while your husband. The words die in my throat. There's a smudge of red on his collar, lipstick, badly wiped away. My fingers go numb, and the glass slips, shattering at my feet. Don't move, Jake says, stepping forward. You'll cut yourself. Stay back. My voice sounds strange, distant. I've got it. You're being ridiculous. Let me help. Like you helped at my first ultrasound appointment? The words come out sharp as the glass around my feet. Oh, wait. You had that emergency meeting with Maya. His face tightens. The Thompson Project is crucial for my career. Is that what we're calling it now? What's that supposed to mean? I laugh, and it sounds all wrong. Your mother's coming over tomorrow. Should I tell her about the lipstick on your collar, or would you prefer to explain it yourself? Jake's hand flies to his neck, then drops. Something cold and calculating crosses his face. You're hormonal. Imagining things. This pregnancy is clearly affecting your judgment. Don't. My hands shake as I reach for the broom. Don't you dare try to gaslight me. I'm not. His phone buzzes, and he glances at it reflexively. His expression softens for a fraction of a second before he catches himself. Is that another emergency meeting? I ask quietly. Client follow-up. He backs toward the door. I need to take this. Of course you do. He pauses in the doorway. We'll talk tomorrow after you've calmed down. Mother will help you see reason. The door closes behind him, and I'm alone with the broken glass again. My phone pings another message from Helen. Jake says you're becoming unstable. We need to discuss medication options. Slowly, deliberately, I open my laptop and pull up the tracking app one installed on Jake's phone last week. The moves steadily across the map, not toward his office, but toward the expensive apartment complex where Maya lives. I open a new document and start typing. Day 21 of surveillance. Subject left house at 9:47 p.m. after gaslighting attempt. Current location. I add screenshots of his location, the calendar entries, photos of the lipstick stain. My hand drifts to my stomach where our child grows, unaware of their father's betrayal. I'm sorry, I whisper, but I promise you won't grow up watching your mother be made a fool of. The tracking dot stops moving. I check the address and add it to my growing file of evidence. Tomorrow, Helen wants to discuss my priorities? Perfect. I'll have plenty to discuss with her too. I close the laptop and start sweeping up the broken glass, each shard a promise of what's to come. They want to paint me as unstable? Fine. Let them. They have no idea what I'm capable of when I'm thinking clearly. And right now, my mind has never been clearer. Jake's car key feels heavy in my palm as I stand in our garage at dawn. He's still asleep upstairs, dead to the world after coming home at 3 a.m., reeking of whiskey and perfume. The same perfume that's been clinging to his clothes for weeks now. I shouldn't be doing this. The rational part of my brain screams to walk away, but my feet carry me to his pristine BMW anyway. My hands shake as I unlock it, sliding into the driver's seat that still holds the impression of his body. The center console yields nothing but receipts and breath mints. The glove compartment contains only maintenance records and insurance papers. I'm about to give up when I notice the slight gap under the passenger seat. My fingers brush against something hard, a phone. Older model, no password protection. The screen lights up, revealing dozens of messages from M. Miss you already. Last night was incredible. When can you get away again? Each message burns like acid in my throat. But it's the photos that break me. Jake and Maya at restaurants I've never been to, at concerts he claimed he was too busy to attend with me. Her head on his shoulder, his hand on her waist. Both of them laughing at some private joke while I've been home battling morning sickness alone. The garage door rumbles to life. I freeze, clutching the phone. Jake appears in the doorway, his face shifting from confusion to rage as he spots me in his car. What the hell are you doing? Research, I say, my voice steadier than I feel. For the Thompson Project. Fascinating stuff. He crosses the garage in 3 strides. Give me the phone. Why? Afraid Helen might see these lovely dinner dates? Or maybe your boss would be interested in how you've been spending those late nights at the office. You're making a mistake. His voice drops dangerously low. Think about what you're doing. I have been. For weeks. I hold up the phone. While you've been thinking about Maya. He lunges for the phone, but I'm faster. Don't, I warn. I've already backed everything up. You're hysterical, he spits. This is exactly why I needed. He stops himself, but the damage is done. Needed what, Jake? Someone who isn't pregnant and inconvenient. This isn't you, he says, switching tactics. The hormones are making you paranoid. Let me help you. I laugh, and it sounds like breaking glass. Help me? Like you helped Maya climb the corporate ladder? On her back, apparently. His hand shoots out, grabbing my wrist. The phone clatters to the floor. You're embarrassing yourself. No, I wrench away, I'm exposing you. Think carefully about your next move, he says quietly. Who do you think they'll believe? The successful executive or his unstable, hormonal wife? That's why you've been laying the groundwork with Helen, isn't it? Painting me as unhinged. The pieces click into place. How long have you been planning this? He doesn't answer, but his silence says everything. You know what's funny? I retrieve the phone, My hand's steady now. I actually thought this baby would bring us closer. Instead, it just showed me who you really are. Nova. Save it. I head for the door, then pause. Oh, and Jake? Maya's not the only one who knows how to document things. Check your email. I just sent you some interesting screenshots. I think Helen and your boss might find them enlightening. The color drains from his face. You wouldn't dare. The old Nova wouldn't, I agree. But you killed her. Congratulations on creating something much worse. I leave him standing in the garage, staring at his phone as messages start flooding in. Helen's name flashes on his screen, followed by his boss's. My hand rests on my stomach as I walk away, feeling stronger with each step. They wanted to paint me as unstable? Fine. But they forgot one crucial detail: a mother protecting her child is capable of anything. And I'm just getting started. The doctor's voice fades into white noise as I stare at the ultrasound monitor. Bed rest, she's saying. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. You need to stop working immediately. My hand tightens around the prescription she's trying to give me. I can't afford to stop working. She frowns, glancing at my empty ring finger. I stopped wearing Jake's ring last week. Is there someone who can help support you during this time? The irony makes me laugh, but it comes out as more of a sob. Yesterday, Jake drained our joint account. For legal preparations, his email said, "Given your recent unstable behavior." I'll figure something out, I tell her, but my voice sounds hollow even to me. Back home, I find Jake waiting in the kitchen. He's wearing his court suit, the one that costs more than 3 months of my salary. We need to talk about your leave of absence, he says, not looking up from his phone. The company's concerned about the project timeline. The company or Maya? His jaw tightens. I'm trying to be reasonable here. You can't just stop working and expect. The doctor says I have to. Convenient timing. He finally looks at me, his expression calculated. Right after you tried to blackmail me. Blackmail? I grip the counter as the room sways slightly. You mean exposing your affair? The board sees it differently. His smile is cold. They're very concerned about workplace harassment. Maya's quite upset about your accusations. The pieces click into place. You're having me fired. You're being offered a generous severance package. Contingent on signing an NDA, of course. My legs give out, and I sink into a chair. I'm carrying your child. Allegedly. He slides a document across the table. We'll need a paternity test. The room goes very quiet. I can hear the clock ticking, marking seconds that feel like years. You know it's yours. Do I? Given your emotional state lately. He shrugs. My lawyer suggests we explore all possibilities. Your lawyer. My voice sounds strange, distant. The one you hired with our savings? I had to protect myself. He stands, straightening his tie. The severance papers need to be signed by Friday. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. As he turns to leave, I notice something fall from his pocket, a receipt. I wait until he's gone before picking it up. It's from a jewelry store, dated yesterday. The amount makes my head spin. My phone buzzes, a text from an unknown number. It's a photo of Maya, wearing a diamond ring that matches the receipt's description. Below it, a message. Thought you should know. He's not just leaving you, he's replacing you. The contact information shows it's from someone in Jake's office. Seems I'm not the only one he's made enemies of. My laptop sits on the counter, still open to our banking records. A notification pops up, another transfer from our joint account to his private one. The bastard's not just trying to leave me, he's trying to leave me destitute. The baby kicks, as if sensing my distress. I press a hand to my stomach, feeling the movement that reminds me what I'm fighting for. It's okay, I whisper, but I'm not sure who I'm trying to convince. We're okay. My phone buzzes again. This time it's my mother, your father, and I just got a concerning call from Helen. What's going on? I stare at the message, then at the severance papers. Then at the receipt that proves Jake's already planning his new life while systematically destroying mine. The baby kicks again, stronger this time. Right. This isn't just about me anymore. I reach for my phone, but instead of calling my mother, I dial a different number, the forensic accountant whose card I've been carrying since I first suspected Jake's affair. Hello, I say, my voice steady for the first time today. I need help tracking some suspicious financial transactions. How soon can we meet? The forensic accountant's findings sit heavy in my lap as I wait in Helen's pristine living room. The numbers blur together. Offshore accounts, hidden assets, systematic financial abuse spanning our entire marriage. Jake hasn't just been planning to leave me. He's been preparing for years. Helen sweeps in, perfectly coiffed as always. Nova, dear, you look dreadful. Have you been taking those anxiety medications Jake mentioned? Actually, I start to respond, but the room suddenly tilts. Black spots dance across my vision. Nova? Helen's voice shifts from condescending to concerned. Nova. I wake up in the hospital, the steady beep of monitors marking time. Helen sits beside me, her makeup smeared, something I've never seen before. Your blood pressure bottomed out, she says quietly. The baby, my hands fly to my stomach, is stable. For now. She picks up my chart, squinting through designer frames. But they're concerned about preeclampsia. Nova, why didn't you tell anyone how bad things were? I laugh, but it comes out as a sob. I tried. You told me I was being dramatic. She flinches. I thought. Jake said. Jake says a lot of things. I pull the accountant's report from my bag. Like how he's been funneling money into secret accounts since before our wedding. Helen's hands shake as she reads. Her face grows paler with each page. This can't be right. My son wouldn't. Check the transfers to Maya Thompson. My voice sounds distant, clinical. They started 6 months ago, right when I got pregnant. She flips pages frantically until she finds it. Her sharp intake of breath tells me she's seen the engagement ring purchase. I'm going to be sick, she whispers. That's how I felt when the door opens, cutting me off. Jake strides in, Maya trailing behind him. They freeze at the sight of Helen. Mother, Jake recovers quickly. You shouldn't be here. Nova's been making wild accusations. About the money you've been hiding? Helen's voice could freeze hell. Or about your pregnant mistress? Maya's hand flies to her stomach. The gesture is unconscious, instinctive, and damning. The monitors start beeping faster as the pieces click into place. You're pregnant. Jake steps forward, all smooth concern. Nova, you need to calm down. Don't you dare. Helen rises, a lioness protecting her cub. How long? 3 months, Maya whispers. The timeline hits me like a physical blow. He got her pregnant while I was battling morning sickness, while I was trying to save our marriage. Get out. Helen's voice trembles with rage. Both of you. Mother, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. She holds up the financial report. I understand you're not just a cheater, but a thief. I understand you've been systematically destroying your wife while building a life with her. The monitors shriek as my vision blurs again. Nova. Helen's voice seems to come from very far away. I need help in here. Medical staff flood the room. Through the chaos, I see Jake being forcibly removed, his protests lost in the commotion. The last thing I hear before consciousness fades is Helen's voice, steel sharp and certain. Call my lawyer. Now. I surface briefly, catching fragments of conversation. Emergency C-section if her pressure doesn't stabilize. Restraining order against the husband. Financial forensics team. Helen's hand grips mine. I was wrong about everything, she whispers. But I'm here now. We're going to destroy him, Nova. For both our grandchildren. The monitors steady as I process her words. Jake didn't just betray me. He betrayed his mother, his unborn child, his entire family legacy. And Helen, with her social connections and financial power, has just become my most powerful ally. I squeeze her hand back, letting her feel my response. We don't need words anymore. We both understand what needs to be done. The game has changed. This isn't just about revenge anymore, it's about justice. And with Helen Adams on my side, Jake is about to learn exactly what it means to lose everything. The house feels different when Helen and I return from the hospital. Maybe it's the way Jake's left dirty dishes everywhere, or how his and Maya's clothes litter our bedroom floor. He's been living like a bachelor while I fought for our baby's life. Don't touch anything, Helen says, photographing each room. The lawyers need to see how he's treated the marital home. I nod, one hand on my still swollen belly. The doctors managed to stabilize us both, but one wrong move could send me back to the hospital. Or worse. The front door opens. Jake stumbles in, reeking of expensive scotch. He freezes when he sees us. "You're not supposed to be here," he slurs. "The restraining order applies to you, not us." Helen's voice could cut glass. "This is still Nova's legal residence." He laughs, ugly and sharp. "Not for long." Maya's already picked out new curtains. My legs threaten to give out, but I force myself to stand straight. "Where's the nursery furniture?" "Sold it." He shrugs. "Maya wanted different stuff for our baby." The room spins. Helen grabs my arm, steadying me. "You sold." I can't finish the sentence. "Along with your grandmother's jewelry." He smirks. "Should have kept better track of your things, Nova." Helen's grip tightens. "Those were family heirlooms." We're being the operative word. Jake loosens his tie. "Like this marriage." Past tense. "The court might see it differently," Helen says, once they review the financial records. Something shifts in Jake's eyes, a flash of fear quickly masked by anger. "You really want to play this game?" "I can make things very difficult." "More difficult than trying to kill your child?" The words escape before I can stop them. He steps forward, menacing. "Careful, Nova. Stress isn't good for your condition, remember." "Are you threatening her?" Helen moves between us. "Just stating facts." His smile turns cruel. "Like the fact that Maya's pregnancy is progressing perfectly. No complications. No drama. Maybe the problem isn't the stress, Nova. Maybe it's just you." The baby kicks hard, as if protesting. I press a hand to my side, and Jake's eyes follow the movement. "Don't worry," he says softly. "Once the paternity test proves that child isn't mine, you won't have to pretend anymore." "We both know it's yours," I whisper. "Do we?" He pulls out his phone. "Because I have some interesting security footage from the office. You and that IT guy working late." He lets the implication hang. "That's a lie. Truth is whatever I can prove in court." He shows us the screen, doctored footage of me with a male colleague. Amazing what money can buy these days. My knees buckle. Helen catches me as Jake continues. "The board already thinks you're unstable. Add infidelity charges and well, who would believe anything you say about our finances?" "You bastard," Helen hisses. "Careful, mother. You're one signature away from losing your position on the family trust." "Sure you want to pick sides." The room goes quiet except for the sound of my ragged breathing. Jake moves toward the stairs, then pauses. "Oh, and Nova?" "Maya's wearing your grandmother's sapphire ring. Looks better on her anyway." He disappears upstairs, leaving us in the wreckage of what was once my life. Helen's hands shake as she helps me to a chair. "He's thought of everything," I whisper. "Not everything." Helen pulls out her phone, stopping the recording. "He just confessed to selling stolen property and fabricating evidence. While drunk." I stare at her, hope warring with despair. Will it be enough? Alone? No. She squeezes my hand. But combined with what else we have, it's a start. Upstairs, we hear Jake talking, presumably to Maya, planning their perfect future while systematically destroying mine. "I can't lose this baby," I say. "I can't lose everything." "You won't." Helen's voice hardens with resolve. "Because we're going to take everything from him first." The baby kicks again, stronger this time. Like a signal. Like a promise. The boardroom falls silent as I walk in, Helen at my side. Jake's face drains of color when he sees us. Maya, sitting beside him, touches her stomach protectively, a gesture that might have sparked sympathy in me once. Not anymore. "This is a closed meeting," Jake says, but his voice wavers. Helen smiles, razor sharp. "As major shareholders, we have every right to be here." The board members shift uncomfortably. Jake's boss, Richard, clears his throat. "Mrs. Adams, given the circumstances." The circumstances, I interrupt, placing a USB drive on the table, are exactly why we're here. Jake lunges for the drive, but Helen's already connected it to the projector. The screen fills with financial records, transfers, hidden accounts, falsified expense reports. What is this? Richard demands. Evidence of systematic embezzlement, Helen says. Using company resources to fund a personal lifestyle, including gifts for certain employees. Her eyes cut to Maya's ring, my grandmother's sapphire glinting accusingly. Maya's hand drops to her lap. Jake stands desperate. These documents are clearly fabricated. Nova's unstable. Like the security footage you doctored? I play his drunken confession through my phone. The room goes deadly quiet. You recorded me illegally, he snarls. Actually, Helen produces a document. As co-owner of the residence, Nova had every right to record conversations in her home. Unlike someone who falsified company records. Richard's face darkens as he reviews the evidence. Jake, is this true? Of course not. This is a vindictive attack by my pregnant ex. Soon-to-be ex, I correct. And I'm not the only one who's pregnant, am I, Maya? Maya pales. Several board members gasp. That's irrelevant, Jake snaps. Is it? Helen pulls out another document. Because according to company policy, relationships between supervisors and direct reports must be disclosed, especially when said supervisor is authorizing bonuses and promotions. Maya stands abruptly. I need to. Sit down, Jake hisses, grabbing her arm. Don't touch me. She jerks away. You said this would never come out. You promised. Maya, he warns, but she's unraveling. You said you'd handle everything. The money, the promotion, the baby, she stops, horror dawning on her face. The baby? Richard's voice could freeze hell. The position we just promoted you to is meant for someone who's taking maternity leave? Jake's mask finally cracks. I can explain. Like you explained the missing nursery furniture? I ask quietly. Or my grandmother's jewelry. Or the trust fund you drained. You bitch, he lunges toward me, but security's already moving. I wouldn't, Helen says coldly. Assaulting a pregnant woman in front of witnesses? Even your lawyer couldn't spin that. The boardroom erupts into chaos. Maya's sobbing, security's restraining Jake, board members are shouting. Through it all, I remain standing, one hand on my stomach, watching my husband's carefully constructed world implode. This isn't over. Jake spits as security escorts him out. Actually, it is. Richard turns to Maya. Miss Thompson, please stay. We need to discuss your position. Everyone else, clear the room. As people file out, I catch Jake's eye one last time. The hatred there would have broken me once. Now it feels like vindication. Nova, Maya calls suddenly. I'm sorry. I didn't know. About the jewelry, the nursery. He said you didn't want them. I touch my grandmother's ring on her finger. Keep it. Consider it a reminder of what happens when you build your happiness on someone else's pain. Outside, Helen squeezes my hand. You did it. We did it, I correct. But it's not over yet. No, she agrees. The criminal charges are next. Then the divorce. I watch through the glass as Maya crumbles under Richard's questioning while security escorts Jake from the building. His perfect life dismantled in under an hour. The baby kicks, stronger than ever. For the first time in months, I smile. Let's go home, I tell Helen. The real home, not the one he destroyed. As we leave, I delete Jake's number from my phone. Some things don't need an encore performance. The envelope arrives on the same day my son does. I'm still in the delivery room, Helen holding my hand, when the nurse brings in the registered letter along with the birth certificate forms. Mrs. Adams, she says, a courier insisted this was urgent. The return address shows Jake's lawyer's firm. My hands shake as I open it, but not from fear, not anymore. Inside is a single sheet of paper and a key. The letter is handwritten, Jake's precise script now unsteady. I found this in my father's study. Maybe now I understand why he left. The key belongs to a safety deposit box. Helen's eyes widen in recognition. That's your grandmother's key, she whispers. The one Jake claimed he lost. My son stirs in his bassinet, and something clicks into place. Can you check what's in it? Helen returns an hour later, holding a familiar velvet box. Inside, my grandmother's jewelry collection gleams, every piece Jake claimed he'd sold. There's more, Helen says, placing a worn journal beside me. Your grandmother's diary. Jake's father. He tried to steal these 2 years ago. That's why he disappeared. The baby fusses, and I lift him, studying his tiny features. He has Jake's eyes, but they're softer somehow. Kinder. He was trying to tell me something, I realize. About patterns. About fathers and sons. Helen takes the diary. Should I read it? No. I touch my son's cheek. Some cycles need to end. The nurse returns with the birth certificate forms. Have you chosen a name? I look at my son, at the jewelry that represents generations of strong women, at Helen who helped me break free. James, I say finally. But not after his father. After my grandmother, Jamie. Helen's breath catches. Nova. He'll know where he comes from, I say firmly. But he'll write his own story. A commotion outside interrupts us. Jake's voice carries through the door. I have a right to see my son. Security arrives before he reaches us, but not before I glimpse his face through the window, haunted, desperate. For a moment, I see his father in him, the same pattern playing out again. Should I call the police? Helen asks. I look down at James, peaceful despite the chaos. No, let him go. After everything he did? That's why. I adjust James's blanket. I won't let anger shape my son's world the way it shaped Jake's. Later, when the hospital quiets, I read Jake's letter again. Between the lines, I see a different story, not just of betrayal and revenge, but of broken men trying to outrun their father's shadows. Helen helps me pack the jewelry away, but I keep one piece out, a simple silver locket. Inside, I place a tiny photo of James next to the faded picture of my grandmother. What will you tell him? Helen asks. About Jake. The truth, I say. That his father lost his way. That patterns can be broken. That he's free to be better. A nurse brings in release papers and a second letter. This one from Maya. I set it aside, unopened. Some chapters don't need an ending. James stirs, reaching up with perfect tiny fingers. I let him grasp my thumb, marveling at his strength, his possibility. Ready to go home? Helen asks. Home. Not the house Jake and I shared, but my parents' beach cottage where the air smells of salt and new beginnings. Yes, I say and mean it. I tuck Jake's letter into the diary, a reminder not of what I lost, but what I refused to become. The revenge I thought I wanted has transformed into something else, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. James sleeps against my chest as we leave, his heart beating its own rhythm, writing its own story. In the end, that's the greatest revenge of all, not destruction, but creation. Not continuing the cycle, but breaking free. We step into the sunlight, my son and I, leaving the shadows behind.
So they're saying I grew up with just my mom, huh? That must have been really tough. They're saying our home wasn't good enough for their son to marry into. Right now, I'm sitting here with my fiance's parents and they're saying some really mean things to me. They're not just making fun of me, they're making fun of my mom too. They're a terrible family. I'm not going to agree to marry their son. I'll show them what it feels like and say no to their proposal. They deserve to feel really bad about how they're acting. My name is Emma, and I'm 27 years old. It's just me and my mom in our family. My dad died in an accident when I was little, leaving us alone. When my dad passed away, my mom didn't cry. She always smiled, even though I was crying a lot. My mom worked really hard so I could go to university and study law. Now I work for a big company and stay really busy. My fiancé, Michael, is 30 years old, 3 years older than me. He asked me to marry him after we'd been together for a year and a half. He asked me out after we met at work, and I said yes because I wanted to make my mom happy, even though I thought it might be too soon. Today, we're going to meet his parents to talk about our wedding. I'm so nervous. Do I look okay? Don't worry, Emma. You always stress too much. But Michael, you mentioned your parents are quite important. They're considered wealthy. It's more about my granddad, though. He was quite successful. Yeah, his folks are what you call rich. His granddad did well as a business person and left a lot of money when he died. It seems like his dad is living off that money. Do you think they'll be okay with it? I picked this gift from a fancy store, but do you think they'll appreciate it? It's okay, it's okay. What matters is that we brought a gift. Gosh, I'm really anxious, you know. He's just going back to his parents' house. So he's calmer than me. I'm so nervous, it feels like my heart might leap out of my mouth. Try to be a bit more serious. This is a formal meeting to tell them about our wedding. As I started to get annoyed by his relaxed attitude, I saw a huge mansion that took my breath away. It's huge, just like I thought. When I quietly said that, he chuckled proudly. Granddad was quite something. Dad and everyone else are waiting. Let's go in fast. As we stepped into the entrance together, the big door opened by itself and his parents welcomed us. Hello, you're Emma, right? Our son has told us about you. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Michael's mother. Yes, nice to meet you. I'm Emma. You're so sweet. Please come in. I'll prepare some tea. His mom was calm and smiling the whole time, which helped me relax a bit. His dad was also friendly. So you work with Michael, huh, Emma? That's impressive. A woman working at that company. Thank you. The term a woman bothered me a bit, but I took it as a compliment and replied politely. However, as the conversation went on, I started to feel more and more uncomfortable. Well, deciding to marry Michael takes courage, Emma. Huh? What do you mean? Michael's parents, in other words, us, were wealthy. Normally, someone might feel intimidated by the difference in status and be hesitant about marriage, you know. Yeah, some people might feel that way. Michael's dad seemed to think they were quite special and didn't hesitate to talk about their status. Michael's mom, who had been calm before, started to show her true colors as the conversation went on. Well, my family wasn't really rich, but as you can see, and pardon me for saying this, I'm quite attractive. Don't you think I'm a good match for my husband? Oh, I see, Emma. You're remarkable for agreeing to marry Michael with your looks. I couldn't do it. I couldn't tell if she was being sarcastic or sincere. I looked at Michael for help, but he didn't seem to care. In fact, he even joined in and started teasing me with his parents. Emma, she's not the most beautiful, but she's good at her job. I think she'll make a good wife. She's highly respected at work, even though she's a woman. I believe she can keep up with me, right? Was he always like this? When it was just the two of us, he seemed more composed. Maybe he acts different around his parents. While I wondered about this, I managed to keep up a polite smile. Suddenly, Michael's dad asked him, "Oh, Michael, have you met her parents yet?" Of course, I've already handled that, so no need to worry. I assume Emma's parents are pretty ordinary. She doesn't have a dad, but her mom seems like any other mom. After Michael's response, his dad's eyebrows twitched. No dad, Emma. What's the story there? Taken aback by the sudden change in Michael's dad, I quickly explained. My dad died in an accident when I was little, so my mom raised me on her own. So you grew up in a single-parent household? Yeah, that's right. I still live with my mom. When I finished explaining, Michael's dad looked deeply thoughtful, and his mom seemed to get upset. They started whispering as if they were having a private conversation. Is everything okay? I asked cautiously, confused by their reactions. At the same time, Michael's mom said something surprising. This could be a problem. What do you mean? Michael, maybe you should think again about marrying her. Mom will find you a girl from a better background. Wait, what are you saying? Michael's mother gave me a cold stare. A girl raised by a single mother isn't suitable for Michael, is she? Right beside her, Michael's father quickly added, Exactly, Michael. Despite her career success, coming from a single-parent household is a problem, isn't it? I've warned you many times to be cautious about who you marry, but you... It felt like I was being judged like a faulty item. Hearing such words from my fiance's parents, whom I was meeting for the first time, was completely unexpected. I was left stunned in shock. Then my fiancé, Michael, said something that made me question if I heard correctly. Oh, so she's not even close to meeting the standards. I thought she might barely make it, but I'm already 30 and finding someone else would be a hassle, so I'll just settle for Emma. What? Michael, don't we want to get married because we love each other? You didn't really think I was marrying for love, did you? He laughed loudly, tossing out those harsh words. All I want is a wife who can manage the house like a maid. I can't truly love someone with a family background like yours." "That's right," Michael's mom chimed in, agreeing with his cold words. Even Michael's dad nodded along, laughing mockingly. "I can't believe this. I thought he was the one who genuinely wanted to marry me out of love." I was completely speechless at this sudden turn of events. As I struggled to find words, Michael's parents continued their verbal assault. "Single mother household. It's audacious of you to even consider marrying my son when you come from such a disgraceful background." "Absolutely not. Our son cannot marry a girl brought up in such a low-class environment." In that moment, all the emotions I had been suppressing reached their breaking point. Instead of shock, I felt a surge of anger at the insults directed towards my life and my beloved mother. I couldn't contain it any longer. Slowly, I raised my head and calmly addressed them. "Fine. Let's cancel the wedding, and I request that you leave immediately." Not only were Michael's parents shocked by my statement, but even he seemed taken aback. He asked me in confusion, "Emma, what are you suddenly saying? Are you asking me to leave? Don't you understand? Why are you saying this? I don't get it." In response, Michael's parents started causing a scene. "Exactly. We don't have to take orders from someone like you, Emma. Your family background is poor, and your attitude is terrible. What do you think you're doing? Be quiet." I slammed my hand on the desk and stood up. "Do you know who owns the land this house is on?" "What are you talking about? This land was inherited from my father." "From your father? Can you prove that this land is yours? Do you have any evidence?" When asked for proof, Michael's father started to panic. They seemed to have never checked, whispering to each other. "What's the problem? If you own the land, there should be proof, right? Like inheritance documents. We don't have anything like that. This house was built by my father, and this land belonged to him from the beginning. That's how he could build it." As Michael's father spoke, Michael's mother also chimed in. "First of all, what are you talking about, Emma? It's impolite for someone like you to discuss someone else's property. Stop it. Just because my parents didn't approve of our marriage, don't start making baseless accusations. It's pointless to keep going like this." I decided to reveal the truth. "It seems you're unaware, so I'll explain. Your grandfather only had a lease agreement with my grandfather." "What? A lease agreement?" It seemed like a new term for him, and Michael's father looked confused. I was frustrated and explained it patiently so even this ignorant family could grasp it. A lease agreement means you're allowed to use the land. Right now, you're using it for free, but when the agreement ends, it goes back to us. So basically, your grandfather is just borrowing this land temporarily from mine." "No, that can't be. I've never heard of such a thing. You're lying." "Are you calling me a liar? That's not true, and we have the contract to prove it. We've already checked its validity." Michael's father was stunned and flustered by this unexpected truth. "No, it can't be true. You're just making it up. You come from a single-parent family and your dad passed away." "That doesn't matter. My mom's dad owned a lot of land and lent it to many people. We've been able to live thanks to his support." "You own that much land?" "Yeah, I studied law in college, so my mom and I were looking into our land leases. That's when we found out that this place where you live is also owned by my grandfather." "Do you get it now?" The three of them were shocked and speechless. They were struggling to understand their situation, but I explained it anyway. "Considering this, could you please leave this land soon? According to the contract, the free rental period ended a while ago. I believe my mom sent you a notice beforehand." "A notice?" "No, we never got anything, right, Mom?" Michael's father looked to his mom for confirmation, but she replied with a pale face. "I did notice an envelope coming every month, but I didn't really understand what it was for, so I thought it was junk mail and threw it away." "Could that be it?" "That was the notice," I said with a smile. "We've been sending notices for over 2 years now. What will you do? Pay 2 years' worth of land rent or leave? You need to decide." "Wait, hold on. You can't just spring this on us out of nowhere." "Out of nowhere? We've been asking you to do something for a while now." "Please, make a decision," Michael's father begged desperately, kneeling down. "We've been facing huge losses in the stock market recently, and our assets are minimal. We were counting on Michael's support from now on. But there was no room for leniency anymore. I had planned to settle things amicably if the marriage was decided and if I received an apology about the notices. But since you've insulted my mother, I've had enough." I'm sorry, but I can't let you continue to stay on this land for free. With that refusal, Michael's parents started to tremble. Even Michael, who had been calm until then, began to change his attitude as if it were the right moment. Hey, Emma, can't you stop this now? I'm going to marry you, so please. What are you saying now? So what? Let's just forget about this. If we get married, there won't be any issues with the land, right? Right? Is this guy for real? I can't imagine marrying someone so disrespectful. At this point, I don't meet a man who insults his fiancée alongside his parents. I'm sorry, but I have to decline. I refuse to become part of a family with such a conceited man like you and your knave parents. At my words, he looked like he was on the verge of tears. Please forgive me. What happened next doesn't need much explanation. Despite boasting about their wealth, his parents were actually struggling financially. They couldn't even afford to pay the land tax for 2 years upfront, revealing their true financial situation. Eventually, they had to leave their land, sell their grandfather's pride and joy, the house, to cover the overdue taxes. They tried to maintain their lifestyle for a while, but it seems their money dried up quickly. Now they're living in a small apartment as a family of 3. Word about the whole ordeal spread quickly within the company, and he lost his reputation. However, his parents rely on his income, so it seems he's stuck. Sometimes I receive romantic emails from him, but I never reply. I have no feelings for him whatsoever, and I doubt I'll ever trust him again. He's become the subject of gossip at the company, and I secretly hope he continues to struggle in his tough situation.